Chapter 21. Arrival at Dressrosa. How boring. That was Kane's verdict on the 10th day at sea. He even regretted refusing Little Z and Yamato when they offered to come along. If they'd been here, he could at least have someone to play landlord with. Instead, Kane watched Jack pumping weights on the deck, Page 1, the Air Force guy, perched on Rayquaza's head and Ulti circling him, trying to get her brother's attention, and sighed. Life was not easy. Kane stretched out a hand toward the sky. An invisible ripple spread into the cosmos, and moments later, a meteorite, several meters across, blazed down and hurtled toward the ship. Jack and the others barely reacted. They'd seen this every day since they boarded. Ulti glanced, snorted, and muttered, "Kane's gnawing on rocks again. I don't get what's so great about them." Page 1 kept staring at the water. "Didn't Big Brother Kane say he's cultivating?" Ulti immediately snapped, grabbed Page 1 by the collar, and shook him. "Little Page, you can't ignore your sister when I talk to you." I'm sorry, sis," Page 1 groaned, rolling his eyes. While they bickered, Kane had already cooled the meteorite and hauled it onto the deck. "Jack!" he called. A flash of sword light answered. The meteorite was cut into fist-sized pieces in an instant, perfectly portioned for Kane to eat. Jack sheathed his two scimitars and went back to lifting. "As expected of my most trusted brother. We have perfect chemistry," he said without fanfare. Kane gave him a thumbs up, picked up a shard, tossed it into his mouth, and crunched. This one's a little spicy. Not bad." As the rock dissolved, a faint cosmic energy seeped into Kane, drawn into his body. It was tiny, but the sense of progress was intoxicating. Kane hadn't been joking when he'd told Jack he was cultivating by eating meteorites. Ever since he'd bonded with Rayquaza, he'd been obsessed with Mega Evolution. It looked so powerful and glorious. Unlike many Pokémon, Rayquaza's Mega Evolution didn't require an external item. It used meteor-derived energy stored within its body. Kyogre and Groudon couldn't do that. Kane had tried bringing meteorites to himself to consume, and to his amazement, he'd succeeded. He had an odd feeling the cosmic energy was doing more than strengthening his body. It might be linked to his berry awakening. Maybe the day Rayquaza Mega evolved would be the day his berry fully awakened. With that thought, Kane's appetite for meteorites only grew. As long as there was a progress bar, even the smallest gains mattered. Many people quit studying or chasing a goal because they didn't see a progress bar. Kane preferred to keep chipping away. "Lord Kane, Dressrosa is almost in sight," Speed reported. She'd been monitoring their route. "Good," Kane said. "Tell the crew. Once we dock, give the sailors a day off." Life aboard was grueling. Dressrosa's reputation as a land of love and leisure would be the perfect respite. An hour later, a tropical island with a resort atmosphere rose on the horizon. Dressrosa. Jack put down his dumbbells and asked, "Kane, are we heading straight to the palace?" Kane thought a moment. "Speed and I definitely will. As for you, Ulti and Page 1, it's your choice." He wasn't worried about appearing weak if only a few went ashore. In this world, individual strength mattered more than appearances. Even though he'd given them freedom, Jack and the others all wanted to follow Kane. They still had discipline. As they neared Dressrosa Port, the enormous Rayquaza drew every eye on shore. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Pirates! No, our king is one of the Shichibukai. That's the beast's flag." The beast's pirate's name wasn't unheard of in the New World. It frightened children into silence. At the news that the beasts had arrived, the bustling port emptied in an instant. Only a few brave or stranded folks remained. "Captain, let's run. That's the beast's pirates," someone urged. The captain, a man in a pirate hat with a long saber at his waist, laughed. "Run? Who do you think I am? I'm Pointed Blade Davy. I take on sea emperors. My lads, our time to make a name for ourselves has come." He drew his long saber and pointed at Kane's group. Kane raised an eyebrow. Who was this to be so brazen? He looked to Speed. She was the ship's butler and secretary. She knew the local notorious pirates. Speed frowned, then said, "Lord Kane, I don't have any record of that crew, but I can confirm their captain's bounty is under 100 million. Below that bounty, she thought, a crew wasn't worth officially cataloging. Kane nodded. "Jack, handle this." Jack wordlessly drew his scimitars, transformed into his mammoth beastman form, and charged. The so-called Pointed Blade Davy didn't stand a chance. One charge ended him and left his men in tatters. The aftermath was a mess. Jack returned, carrying two blood-stained scimitars. At that moment, a man with short blonde hair and sunglasses stepped forward. He wore a pink feathered coat, capri pants, pointed shoes, and a cap, and a curious laugh escaped him. Fu, he smiled broadly. Distinguished guests from afar, my apologies for the noisy welcome. Diamante, clean this up. They're being too loud. The smile on the man's face wasn't warm. There was a thin edge of menace beneath it. Diamante, wearing a fringed hat and marked by two lines on his face, broke formation and strode toward the survivors. Splash, splash. He drew a longsword and finished them with clinical slashes, expressionless. When he was done, he wiped his blade, sheathed it, and said, "My apologies." Kane sneered at the man who'd been laughing. "It is indeed ugly. Your Don Quixote family certainly makes an example of the weak." Doflamingo's smile stiffened. Veins pulsed at his temple, but he held it in. The importance of his arrangement with the beasts made him suppress his displeasure. In the New World, factions survived by one of two means: being strong enough that an emperor would hesitate to attack them, like Hachinosu, or by swearing allegiance to an emperor and borrowing their protection. Doflamingo had chosen the latter. He hadn't hesitated to offend Kaido. He'd cut out middlemen and offered himself up directly. He'd gambled that Kaido needed him, and crucially, he held an ace Kaido would find impossible to refuse. Chapter 22, Doflamingo's Bargaining Chip, Dressrosa Palace, Banquet Hall. Before Doflamingo could speak, Kane slid into the chair at the head of the long table, crossed his fingers, and propped his feet up on the wood, watching Doflamingo in silence. Jack, Ulti, Page 1, and Speed stood behind him like bodyguards. Kane's casual contempt snapped like a wire through the Don Quixote family executives who had accompanied their young master. From the moment they'd found Doffy until now, none of them had ever been treated that way. "Too arrogant," one muttered. "We should show them what we're made of," someone else hissed. The executives glared at Kane, itching to move. All they needed was their young master's command to make the beast's guests bleed on the spot. "They're not here for a friendly visit," Kane said with a mocking curl of his lip. "You are the visitor," Speed reminded him in a low voice. "Am I?" Kane feigned surprise. The insult stung, an all-star, not even a vice-captain, daring to look down on him. His insolence only added to Doflamingo's irritation. The way Kane and his crew acted as if they owned the room made the veins in Doflamingo's forehead throb. He'd come for cooperation with the beasts, not to be humiliated. Suppressing his anger, Doflamingo ground out, "Is this Kaido's intention?" Kane scoffed. "Doflamingo, do you think I came here to have a friendly meal? Don't presume the Emperor's pride can be so easily trampled." "Must we make this unpleasant?" Doflamingo countered, his brow folding into a deep frown. "A partnership with the beasts is a win-win. With my reach, their weapons can be distributed across all 4 seas, something those previous good-for-nothings couldn't manage." "Are you done?" Kane pulled his feet from the table, stood, and stretched as if he'd been bored the whole time. "Since you've gotten what you wanted, it's time you did me a favor." Doflamingo tensed. "What do you mean?" Kane smirked, mocking Kaido's gravelly drawl. "Go test that clown's mettle for me. There," he added with exaggerated politeness, spelling it out, "please don't make it difficult for me, Mr. CLOWN." The Don Quixote executives could no longer contain themselves. "Young master, let us fight. They're just the beasts. Let them see the family's true power," they shouted. Doflamingo covered his face with a hand and laughed, a strained, furious sound that vibrated through the hall. "I've done business so long, I almost forgot I was a pirate." If words failed, then it would be settled in the way pirates did. His eyes sharpened, and he unleashed a surge of conqueror's haki toward Kane and his group. Kane did not flinch. A raw, rippling Haoshoku burst from him as well. The two wills collided with a boom that sent a shockwave through the hall. Black and crimson lightning laced outward from the point of impact like a spiderweb. The long table at the center splintered first. The ceiling and supporting pillars cracked and rained debris. Executives foamed at the mouth, rolled their eyes, and collapsed. The rest staggered about like small boats in a storm, panicked and bleeding from their ears. "Such terrifying Haoshoku!" Trebol hissed from under his cloak, one hand clamped to his skull. He had never seen a Haoshoku that could rival Doffy's. But from behind Doflamingo, He couldn't see the expression that had crept across his young master's face. Within a heartbeat, Doflamingo's body pitched backwards, his face washed pale. He hit the clash. Doffy, Pika armored and aghast, lunged to support him, keeping him upright and saving him from outright collapse. Kane, meanwhile, looked as if he'd barely exerted himself. Jack, Ulti, Page 1, and the rest stood unshaken. Even Speed, kept intentionally out of harm's way, was fine. Every stunned executive who could think admitted it. Their young master had been bested in the clash of Conqueror's hockey. Doflamingo shook off Pika's hands and steadied himself. "Don't get cocky, bastard," he snarled. Conqueror's hockey didn't decide everything. He flexed his fingers and called out, "5 color string." Nearly invisible filaments shot from the tips of his 5 fingers, sealed in armament hockey. The threads lashed toward Kane's throat, sharp enough, Doflamingo thought, to slice through flesh, stone, even metal. Ulti frowned as she watched. Why hasn't Kane used his ability yet? Even if she hadn't been directly struck by the hockey aftershocks, she could feel Doflamingo's strength. He was more than just a clever businessman. He was someone who could qualify as a headliner among the beasts. "Humph. Trust Kane," Jack said, folding his arms. No one present understood Kane's strength like Jack did. Kane was the kind of monster who could take himself as a punching bag and still stand smiling. The 5 black threads scraped against Kane's neck and sparked and did nothing else. It didn't feel like they were cutting through flesh the way Doflamingo expected. Behind his red sunglasses, Doflamingo's eyes widened. Kane extended a huge, blackened hand and pinched the threads between his fingers. With casual pressure, the 5 strands snapped like thin glass. "You disappoint me," Kane said blandly. "You couldn't even make me use my ability." Doflamingo stared at him, breathing hard, a flash of bloodthirsty humiliation in his eyes. Kane's expression, cool and pleased, finally made sense to Doflamingo. No matter what tricks were thrown at him, Kane remained unbothered, like a brawler who calmly takes a beating to size up his opponents, then finishes them off with a single leisurely blow. Chapter 23. Doflamingo, you are so weak, impossible. The gap, how can it be this wide? Doflamingo's cheeks twitched. He couldn't accept what he'd just seen. He curled his fingers again. String, string, berry. Awakening, activate. The floor, walls, and ceiling erupted into a blizzard of white threads. Violent white string. Tens of thousands of threads surged out from every direction under his control, billowing toward Kane like a tidal wave. Kane stood still and let the cascade wash over him. The thick strings wrapped around him, layer upon layer, coiling tighter like constricting snakes. "Bastard, who do you think you are?" Doflamingo snarled, enraged by Kane's casual demeanor. He poured everything into the technique, driving his berry's power to the limit. "Get crushed!" The mass of white string began to contract. "Young master succeeded!" Trebol cried, triumphant. No one could escape the young master's finishing blow. He'd used this move to take dozens in one strike. But Doflamingo's fierce expression froze. The threads wouldn't tighten. No, worse, they were still expanding. His jaw clenched, veins throbbing. He forced the ability harder, trying to squeeze Kane into nothing. It was useless. No matter how much he pushed, the web only grew. Then, from inside the rolling mass came the sharp sound of snapping fibers. Puff! Boom! The whole white weave burst like an overfilled balloon, erupting into a shower of shredded string. The threads rattled outward, and there in the center, unharmed, stood Kane, now in his Rayquaza beastman form. Just brute force. He broke through my violent white string. Doflamingo's pupils pinched shut as his world tilted and collapsed. "Rejoice, Doflamingo. You forced me to use my berry's power." Kane smiled, mockery written all over his face. The next instant, he vanished. A dark, gleaming dragon claw whipped out and slammed down on Doflamingo's head, driving him into the ground with bone-rattling force. Bang! Doflamingo's skull met earth. Dust and gravel exploded up around him. His red sunglasses shattered, blood poured from his mouth and nose. When the dust cleared, a crater several meters across yawned where his head had hit. "The farce is over." Jack's voice was calm. As expected of Big Brother Kane, Page 1 said, eyes bright. "Humph, would have been better to just attack earlier. Why the theatrics?" Ulti folded her arms. "Lord Kane is so handsome." Speed's eyes glittered. Across the way, the Donkasoti family's executives were stunned into silence. This was their invincible young master, the man they'd believed would twist the world's winds and clouds, and he'd been felled so easily by an unknown. Disbelief and fury warred on their faces, but none of it impressed Kane. He had expected this outcome. If he hadn't finished the fight in one strike, it would have been an inefficient fight. Was Doflamingo weak? Not entirely. He'd become a warlord by a fluke, but he'd developed his berry to awakening. That proved talent. With his strength, he could hang with the upper flying six of the beast's pirates. But that still didn't meet Kane's standard. Even without mastering advanced hockey, the power the Rayquaza form granted was enough to put him among the world's heavy hitters. Physically, he could match King, who had the Lunarian blood boost. It was just that without Armament Hockey's internal destructive techniques, Doflamingo had to rely on chipping away with skills. He could compete with high-tier fighters like King, so handling Doflamingo was trivial. Kane relaxed his grip, then used Doflamingo's blood with 2 fingers to pull up the sides of his mouth into a grotesque grin. The clown's smile was complete. That's better. A clown should look like a clown, right? Kane admired the result for a moment, then remembered something he'd argued about in his previous life. What did Doflamingo's eyes actually look like under those sunglasses? He yanked the red shades off. Pwah! Kane burst into laughter. Ulti doubled over, tears of mirth streaming. Page 1 turned his head and shrugged, trying not to make a sound. Even Jack, normally stern and fearsome, felt his features twitch with astonishment. It really is a surprise. Beneath the lenses, Doflamingo's eyes were surprisingly small, only about half the size of a normal person's. On anyone else, it might be a minor oddity, but on his arrogant, twisted face, the mismatch was ludicrous. No wonder he wore sunglasses year-round. With those eyes, how could he command fear and respect? Click. Kane pulled out a Den Mushi and snapped a photo. Perfect. He tucked the device away, grinning wickedly. He wasn't about to let this image become a weapon against him. This one was his to keep. "Give me that picture, you bastard." Trebol bawled, but he didn't dare step forward. Kane wagged a finger at him. "Hand it over?" "No, I'll keep this little secret for as long as he lives." "We're the villains now, because Kane's smiling evilly," Ulti snorted. "Sis, I think we really are villains," Page 1 murmured weakly. Jack, however, approved. The strong had the right to dispose of the weak as they saw fit. Even if it looked like abuse, the weak owed obedience. "Damn brat," Pika growled and clenched his fists, clearly preparing to use his ability against Kane and the others. Jack's gaze sharpened. He drew a scimitar from beneath his cloak and said coldly, "Still not convinced?" The towering, 8-meter-plus Jack looked down at Pika with the casual menace of someone about to squash an insect. Diamante rushed forward and gripped Pika, forcing him to calm down. Kane's casual blow had shattered the Don Quixote family's illusions. The young master had been decisively outmatched in a single exchange. Any attempt to intervene now would only mean more effortless blows from Kane. Doflamingo lay unconscious, and Trebol, acting as the family's temporary backbone, stepped forward with a sycophantic smile. "Lord Kane, perhaps we should move this to another hall, so we may properly entertain you," he said, his voice oily. Trebol knew that if Kane had wanted to kill the young master outright, he would have done so. Since he hadn't, there was still bargaining to be done. As long as they lived, there was hope. Chapter 24. Violet Kane agreed to Trebol's request, and the 5 of them, led by him, entered another untouched banquet hall. After seating Kane and the others, Trebol tapped the floor with his scepter. At his signal, palace maids rolled in dining carts and set out a spread of delicacies and wines. Trebol tapped again. A troupe of dancers in Dressrosa-style costumes filed in, followed by a band. The lineup seemed tailored to Ulti's taste. There were even a few male dancers mixed in with the women. "Lord Kane, please enjoy the unique dances of Dressrosa," Trebol said with a leering smile. "You may do as you please with them, my lord." Kane swirled the red wine in his glass and said casually, "I heard you captured King Riku's royal family. I haven't had a princess dance for me yet." "Understood. I'll fetch her right away." Trebol smiled in a way all men understood, then left. Outside the banquet hall, Diamante had been waiting. "Pika led the others to guard the young master while he's being treated," Diamante reported lowly. They had only just seized the country. Their hold wasn't secure, and a counterattack from royal loyalists had to be expected. Treble nodded, pleased at how thorough their cadres had been, and ordered, "You stay here. I'll go to the prison and bring Violet out. That scoundrel Kane wants to see her dance." "He really knows how to enjoy himself," Diamante muttered, teeth clenched at the thought of Kane laying hands on the beautiful Violet. Seeing no one nearby, he added, darkly, "Why don't we let Sugar?" "Quiet," Treble snapped, glaring. "The Don Quixote family can't afford any more risks." Sugar's power was devastating against ordinary people and even some strong fighters. But against a hockey master like Kane, whether it would work was another matter entirely. The risk outweighed the reward. "What we need now is to buy time until the young master wakes. Put away all petty schemes," Trebal ordered solemnly. Diamante fell silent and nodded. Trebal departed with less anxiety. The Don Quixote family, for all the rest, was fiercely unified. Trebal did not fear duplicity. In the royal palace prison, Trebal arrived at a cell where a black-haired girl in a violet dress sat captive. "Violet, have you made your choice?" he asked. Violet kept her eyes lowered, voice trembling. "I'm willing to join the Don Quixote family." Trebal sneered. "Trading your loyalty to save your father's life. Quite a bargain." "Good," Trebal said, immediately adopting a cordial smile. "Don't worry. If you join the Don Quixote family as a cadre, we'll treat you like family." He took a key out and unlocked her sea stone manacles. Violet was free again, but before she could savor air or relief, Trebal assigned her first duty as a family cadre. "You're to dance for a big shot," he said. Violet shot him a look of pure contempt. "Is this the family care you promised? Your family is a joke." Trebal's face faltered for a split second, embarrassed, but he quickly masked it with a cold, practical expression. "This person is crucial to the future of the Don Quixote family," he told her. "You must serve him well, by any means necessary, even at the cost of everything. As a cadre, you must be prepared to devote yourself entirely to the family. If that lord wanted me, Trebal would not even bat an eye," Trebal added, forcing the bravado. Violet studied Trebal, his thin, ragged mustache, the missing teeth, the constant snot, and snorted. "Who would be fool enough to fancy you?" Trebal's eye twitched. He swallowed his anger and warned, "Don't get any foolish ideas. Focus on your job as a dancer and think of your family. Don't expect Lord Kane to help you." He went on. "He's one of the Beast's Pirates' great signboards, ruthless through and through." "I think you understand the Beast's Pirates' reputation well enough already," Violet said coldly. Clap, clap, clap. As the music ended, Kane applauded softly. Violet, dressed in a flamenco outfit with a flower between her teeth, had finished a beautiful routine, striking the final pose and bowing gracefully. "As expected from the land of love and passion, the dances are so intense," Kane praised. He was the only one truly watching the performance. Jack, sated from the feast, had his eyes closed and dozed, unmoved by music or movement. Ulti picked idly at a steak without a glance at Violet. Page 1 studied a plate of dress-rosen grilled fish, even questioning the maid about its origin, apparently intent on going fishing there. Speed quietly made a note in her book. "Lord Kane likes flamenco, collecting her master's preferences dutifully. A lot of people who don't know how to appreciate beauty," Kane grumbled, then faced Violet directly. "From now on, you'll be with me." Trebol, standing by, felt his pupils contract. His worst fear had come true. Before Violet could answer, he interjected, trying to stall. "Lord Kane, Violet is still valuable to us. Could you give us some time? You can pick another dancer in the palace." If he could delay, maybe once Kane left, he would forget. If not, they could always claim she resisted arrest and needed to be dealt with. Violet's devil fruit ability was strategically priceless. Treble could not hand her over lightly. Kane's reply chilled him. "Treble, are you trying to play me like that idiot King Riku?" A smile curved Kane's lips. "I don't need to explain the importance of a glance berry user, do I?" He laid his cards on the table. What he wanted was Violet. His earlier display was only because he didn't feel like hunting someone down. The dance was an added pleasure. Treble forced a smile. It's Violet's good fortune to be favored by Lord Kane. A single strategic devil fruit user against the whole Don Quixote family, Treble knew which side mattered. Ulti, who had just realized what was happening, blurted out, "Wait, Kane, you were trying to steal someone all along? I thought you..." "Thought what? That I'm just some perverted glutton?" Kane rolled his eyes. He had no use for a beautiful ornament who couldn't contribute. Violet snapped awake at the sudden turn of events. She dropped to her knees and urgently begged Kane, voice breaking. "Lord Kane, please, save my family. I'll do anything, please." Kane stroked his chin and let out a small, amused hiss. This made him sound almost villainous, but he nodded easily. "I'll protect King Riku's family, Treble. No problem." If winning Violet's loyalty cost him so little, the bargain was worth it. Treble, who had been silently pleading for this outcome, could only answer helplessly, "Of course, no problem, Lord Kane." Violet's relief flooded her features. "Thank you, Lord," she breathed, equal parts astonished and joyous. A problem that had seemed hopeless a moment ago had been solved with a single casual line. It wasn't entirely over. King Riku himself remained in the palace, but the king's eldest daughter's family had already slipped out of town and was now hiding somewhere in Dressrosa. Kane waved a hand. "Ulti, page 1, take Violet and get her family on the ship." "Finding people is the worst part," Ulti grumbled, but she rose obediently. She and page 1 escorted Violet away. Treble, who had been silently beseeching his young master to wake, finally exhaled in private relief. Back inside, Doflamingo stirred and returned to consciousness. He sat up, his head wrapped in bandages, and tried to look humble. "My apologies for my absence just now, Lord Kane," he said with a forced, almost playful politeness. The sight of his bandaged head and earlier embarrassment hadn't dented his composure. He was already the sort of man who could thrive in the new world. His capacity to adapt and endure marked him for greater things. Kane didn't rise to meet him. He simply raised his glass. Doflamingo bowed, picked up his own wine, and gently touched his rim to Kane's, lower than Kane's position, and then drained his drink. Kane sipped his wine and set the glass down. "Now we can discuss the specifics of our cooperation." Doflamingo produced a cooperation plan he'd prepared earlier and slid it over. He spoke earnestly as he explained the terms, and to show his sincerity, even indicated a lower commission. Kane accepted without bargaining. Doflamingo may have been willing to work at a loss to preserve his own position, but he still left others a way to survive. "A pleasant cooperation," Doflamingo said, visibly relieved that things were proceeding smoothly. His tone grew more confident. "A pleasant cooperation." Kane's curiosity shifted. "I heard you were once one of the Celestial Dragons. I'm curious about Mary Geoice and the Celestial Dragons. Tell me about them." Doflamingo sighed. He couldn't hide his bitterness about the past, but his origin wasn't a secret he could keep. After his fall, the story had spread. What he had to tell Kane would be incomplete, but he spoke anyway. "There were originally 20 Celestial Dragon families, tied to the 20 kings who founded the world government," he began. "The Nefertari family of Alabasta renounced that status and stayed in their own country. So that left 19 families. After 800 years, there are probably just over 3,000 legitimate celestial dragons." Kane listened as Doflamingo explained what made someone a legitimate celestial dragon: strict control of the bloodline. Only children born from interfamily marriages were considered legitimate. Offspring from unions with non-celestial dragons weren't counted. Doflamingo mentioned Bonnie as an example, half celestial dragon blood and effectively ignored by the higher powers, and muttered about Saturn conducting his experiments regardless. The celestial families kept their numbers deliberately low, a controlled birth rate, barely enough to sustain themselves without swelling the ranks. Above the celestial dragons are even higher authorities, the Gorosei, Doflamingo continued. And below the Gorosei, there's a mysterious unit, the Gods' Knights. They have the authority to judge and even execute celestial dragons. At that, his face soured. He remembered being rejected by the Gorosei and driven from Pangaea Castle by the Gods' Knights, an affront he had never forgotten. Kane leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me about the Gods' Knights." "They're made up of the most combat-capable celestial dragons," Doflamingo said. "They receive the best resources. Each one is a force to be reckoned with. Any single God's Knight can stir the seas. All of them together could overturn the balance of power." "Who belongs to them?" Kane pressed. Doflamingo's jaw tightened. "I don't know all the names." Kane raised an eyebrow. How could Kane seem to know more than Doflamingo? He had heard of Figerlin Garling and other influential figures, yet Doflamingo, born into the system, now seemed to lack detail. Doflamingo bristled at the implication. I was taken away from the Holy Land when I was a child, he said. What I know comes from what I was told. The God's Knights aren't something I had access to. Even so, he gave what he could, an outline of the God's Knights and the few prominent figures he remembered. His information was dated, but Kane's ears pricked when a familiar name came up, Figurland Garling, though in Doflamingo's account, Garling was only a commander, not yet elevated to supreme rank. Doflamingo went on to reveal another darker truth, the celestial dragon's internal hierarchy. There were numerous superior celestial dragons who ran critical departments of the world government, shaping law and policy to their will. So-called justice and law are their monologues, Doflamingo scoffed. If they pronounce you guilty, you're guilty, no matter if you're innocent. If they declare you innocent, you're clean, even if you've done something monstrous. Kane listened without surprise. It made sense that the celestial dragons' dominance over the world couldn't rest solely on the founding myth. The Gorosei might be at the top, but they relied on the superior celestial dragons and institutions like the God's Knights to enforce their rule. Chapter 26, Doflamingo's Secret. After a few seconds of silence, Kane pressed, "Anything else?" Doflamingo gave a helpless shrug. "No, that's all. I left the Holy Land when I was 8. How could I possibly have any important information?" Kane nodded. Theoretically, that's true. Before Doflamingo could relax, Kane crossed his legs, raised 2 fingers, and said lightly, "But you still have at least 2 pieces of information you can tell me." Doflamingo's eyes narrowed. A cold dread tightened in his chest. "You all go out first." Kane didn't bother arguing. He dismissed the few eavesdroppers in the room. Jack and Speed left without a word. "Young master?" Treble asked softly, but Doflamingo waved him away. When the chamber was cleared, Kane watched him with easy patience. "Lord Kane, I've already told you everything I know. How can I make you believe me?" Doflamingo grit his teeth, determined to resist. That secret was his trump card for survival. He wouldn't reveal it unless it was the absolute last resort. Kane sighed. "The Celestial Dragon's national treasure and the immortality operation. Do I need to keep going?" Doflamingo sprang up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Panic showed even through the bandages around his face. "Impossible. How could Kane know?" "Who exactly are you?" he demanded. "This is absolutely not something the Beast's pirates could know." Even if the Beast's pirates had excellent intelligence, no one could believe a high-ranking celestial dragon had defected to them. Doflamingo could not imagine any scenario in which those secrets would leak to these pirates. Kane smiled with cold confidence. "This is certainly not Beast's intelligence. If it were, it wouldn't be me sitting here talking to you." Doflamingo let out a few forced laughs. "Lord Kane, this concerns the celestial dragon's highest secrets. It's probably not good for you to know. Don't forget the existence of the God's Knights. Once they learn you know this too, they will hunt you across the seas. The mere strength of the Beast's pirates won't stop them." He exaggerated the danger of the God's Knights, trying to frighten Kane into backing off. Kane waved a hand. "That's my concern. Besides, before they chase me, they'll have to kill you first. We're in this together. I believe you'll keep my secret." Doflamingo's eye twitched. "You're pushing me for my trump card and expect me to keep yours?" He tried to leverage his status. "The Gorosei also know I know this secret, and look, I'm still alive. Don't forget, I'm a celestial dragon." "Remember to add former," Kane said flatly. "Although I don't know why the Gorosei would want to protect you, I am certain of one thing. Once outsiders learn this secret, you'll be worthless." Doflamingo's jaw clenched. His bandaged, fractured skull throbbed, reminding him how little room he had to maneuver. If he stayed silent, he might be killed on the spot. If he spoke, there was at least a chance. 2 people who shared the same secret were like grasshoppers on the same rope. Neither would dare expose it. After a tense moment, his resolve snapped into place. "It seems you've made up your mind. Fine. Speak." Kane gestured, waiting. "As for the celestial dragon's national treasure, I don't know much." Doflamingo began, as if afraid Kane wouldn't believe him. He emphasized, "It really isn't much. Secrets at that level aren't fully known by just anyone." Kane nodded, and Doflamingo continued. "It's a weapon that could destroy an island with a single strike. The weapon's origin is very ancient. It was a secret passed down through my family. One of Doflamingo's ancestors had secretly worked for the Gorosei for years. Only after his death was his body released to the family. But before he died, he managed to tell what he knew. He'd been assigned to a secret laboratory because of his knowledge of mechanics, an administrator responsible for overseeing work and supervising the scientists. They couldn't use the weapon because it lacked an energy source. The scientists worked their entire lives trying to find an alternative energy. Doflamingo's voice turned bitter. But they never discovered it, not before they died. Kane's expression didn't change. He already suspected what the so-called national treasure was, the ancient weapon that had destroyed the Luluzia kingdom. The scientists' search had failed. It wasn't until Vegapunk created the Mother Flame that the weapon's function could be restored. Doflamingo nodded. Those men spent their lives in vain. They said the weapon's technology was at least 300 years beyond current understanding. He finished the grim tale. The Gorosei, concluding the project hopeless, shut down the lab and decided to eliminate the scientists to keep the secret. Doflamingo's ancestor had protested. He had been friends with those researchers, but the Gorosei's decision stood. Even a celestial dragon serving them could be silenced. They put that Don Quixote under house arrest to prevent any leaks. After witnessing the deaths of many acquaintances, he fell into melancholy, grew ill, and died. Kane asked, "What about the immortality operation? I heard that if someone undergoes it, they can control the celestial dragon's national treasure and, by extension, the world." Doflamingo admitted, "That's only a rumor, believe it or not." Kane mulled it over. The rumor wasn't entirely baseless. Emu could well be a beneficiary of the immortality operation. Perhaps the ancient weapon had restrictions beyond its energy source. Still, Kane looked at Doflamingo with thin contempt. How could a celestial dragon know so little? After the exchange, Kane felt he'd learned something, yet also felt cheated. Doflamingo's information was partial and frustrating. The only remotely useful tidbit was about the immortality operation, and even that was only a rumor, useless. Chapter 27, Recruiting the Tontata Tribe. Doflamingo's hair seemed to stand on end under Kane's gaze, but he still couldn't figure out what he'd done wrong. He had already confessed everything. This was a secret big enough to shake the world, but it didn't occur to him that Kane would discard him now that his usefulness had ended. "Forget it. It's not your fault you're useless. Just handle the weapons trade," Kane said. Kane shook his head and walked away, leaving Doflamingo stunned and bewildered. The Don Quixote executives watched him go with barely contained glee. They dared not invite him to a farewell banquet for fear he might accept. That malignant presence had finally gone, at least for now. Kane didn't mean to leave Dressrosa entirely. Back on Raikugo, King Riku and his family came to express their gratitude. Violet's search for her people had gone smoothly thanks to the Glareberry. With a quick scan of likely locations, she could pick up traces and follow them. Leading his family, King Riku bowed solemnly. "Mr. Kane, you've saved our entire family. If there's ever anything you need, command us." Kane chuckled inwardly. "No need for someday. I want a favor now." Riku's smile faltered. "Please, name it. I need a place of work for the Tontata tribe. I want to give them a future." Riku's expression hardened with uneasy loyalty. "I'm sorry, I can't. The Riku family and the Tontata have been friends for generations. I won't betray them for my own safety." Kane didn't press a moral argument. He respected loyalty even in villains, but he did point out a blunt fact. "Do you think the Tontata are safe right now? Don't forget the Don Quixote family's history in Dressrosa." At that, Riku paled. 800 years earlier, when the Don Quixote ruled, the Tontata had been treated as slaves. With Doflamingo's return, they'd be exactly the sort of useful people he'd want to control. Realizing the danger, Riku dropped his objections and agreed. He trusted Kane more than the Don Quixote now. Riku led Kane to Greenbit Island, the Tontata home. The uninhabited island northwest of Dressrosa was a tangle of thick vegetation. To get there, they had to cross an iron bridge watched by a school of territorial fighting fish, creatures notorious for leaping at travelers and sending shivers through Dressrosa's populace. The fish sensed footsteps and burst from the water, shooting toward the pair like arrows, spraying water. "Watch out!" Riku drew his sword reflexively. "Don't worry. Just follow me, Kane said calmly. He walked forward, and the fighting fish fell back, thudding back into the river one after another, suddenly limp and unconscious before they ever touched the bridge. Riku stared, speechless, then sheathed his sword and hurried after Kane. Once inside the forest, a soft voice called out, "King Riku, what brings you here? Who is your guest?" Perched on a branch was a small boy in a green hat dressed like a scout. Around him, scouts of the Tontata tribe, tiny, furry folk, no taller than 20 centimeters, with fluffy tails, surrounded Kane and Riku. They looked impossibly cute, but Kane knew their fragility belied incredible strength and blinding speed. For now, perhaps because King Riku was present, they showed no hostility. None of them drew the little guns slung on their backs. "Leo, this is Mr. Kane. He wants to speak with Chief Gan Chiao," Riku said. "Understood. Follow me." The boy, Leo, leaped nimbly through the branches and led them deeper into the woods. The other scouts melted away to resume their patrols. After a short walk, Leo brought them to a clearing. "Wait here. I'll fetch Chief Tanta," he said, then slipped into a hidden hole at the base of a giant tree. Riku explained, "Their kingdom is underground beneath this forest. It keeps them safe from human eyes." "It only treats the symptoms," Kane said. "It won't stop those who mean harm." Riku had no answer. Whether Kane or Doflamingo, if they put in the effort, they could find the Tontata. Worse, the tribe's greatest weakness was their boundless gullibility. If they trusted the wrong people, disaster would follow. That thought was why Riku had been willing to bring Kane here. At least Kane seemed to mean well, and so far had not exploited the Tontata's trust. Soon a procession of Tontata emerged from the tree's root. At their head was a white-bearded elder wearing a crown and holding a scepter. Beside him stood a doll-like blonde little princess. "Dold, you searched for me? Is something wrong?" Chief Ganchao asked, concerned. Riku ran through the recent upheavals in Dressrosa, the Don Quixote restoration, and the risk it posed to the tribe. Ganchao's expression passed through panic and then settled. "The Don Quixote family is back," he murmured. Then, noticing Kane, he brightened. "So Mr. Kane has come to help us? That's wonderful." Kane crouched to meet the chief's level and outlined a plan. "I govern a country called Wano. We need planting experts, people like the Tontata. If you come to work for me, I will pay wages and allocate land for your people to live on for generations. I'll protect your safety." "I would personally accept your offer, Mr. Kane," Gan Chiao replied, pleased and trusting. "But this needs the consent of all our tribesmen." He called to his attendants to gather the people for a vote. Kane's prepared long speech went unused. He had painted the future in one concise offer, and it was enough. King Riku smiled wryly and felt a prickle of unease. He hoped he hadn't invited a wolf into his home. Chapter 28. Go to Beehive Island. After a short discussion, every member of the Tontata tribe on Greenbit Island voted to go work in Wano Country. They were reluctant to leave the tiny island where their people had lived for centuries, or perhaps millennia, but with enemies pressing in, leaving no longer seemed so unacceptable. Mr. Kane had promised they could take seeds of the island's plants back to Wano to replant, and they believed a new green bit could be grown there, so they returned to their kingdom to pack, preparing to depart. A few hours later, aboard the Raikugo. "You stayed out so long just for these little people?" Jack asked, baffled. At 8 meters tall, he looked down on the Tontata like colorful candies. So scary." Princess Manchuri pouted and large tears formed in her eyes. "Princess, I'll protect you," Leo declared, brandishing a needle the size of his body and positioning himself between Manchuri and the giants. Ulti laughed with no mercy. "Ha ha ha, Jack, you really scared them." Page 1 glanced at Kane and asked calmly, "Big brother Kane, is there anything special about these little people?" Kane explained, "They're the Tontata clan, the little people. They have a natural talent for cultivating plants. They were born growers, but the Tontata were also natural warriors. Their one weakness was trusting too easily." Ulti sneered, "What's so great about that? Even Yamato can farm." Kane blinked, then switched to words the others would understand. "Their princess, Manchuri, ate the healing berry. She can cure every illness." That caught everyone's attention. Manchuri was the dream of 1,000 medical scientists, an overpowered devil fruit ability that could restore things to their original state, at the cost of shortening lifespans. Oh, so this little one is that amazing. Jack and the others finally understood her value. With Mancherry, they might as well have an endless supply of healing. Mancherry shrank behind Leo as their hungry stares landed on her. Kane Leo swallowed, and as a true Tontata, looked to Kane as their leader for reassurance. Don't worry, without my order they won't hurt you, and no one can force you to do anything, Kane said, placing a hand on his chest. As a big shot, he had that much confidence. Phew, that's good. Mancherry stepped out, relieved. Kane told Speed to arrange lodging for the Tontata and then turned to King Riku's family. Violet will go with me. Will the rest of you come to Wano, or will you disembark somewhere along the way? King Riku had expected the question. Mr. Kane, we will go to Wano Country. After making an enemy of Doflamingo, they had little choice. Even though King Elisabello II of Prudence was a friend who could have taken them in, Riku didn't want to risk dragging his ally into trouble. Kane nodded. He already had a suitable place in mind for the Riku family. Once the Tontata and King Riku's people were settled, the Raikugo set sail again. Their destination this time, Hachinosu Island, the Beehive Island. One of the New World's few, well-known strongholds, it ranked alongside Wano and Toto Land. Long ago, it had been Rock's base. After his fall, Wang Ji took control and maintained Rock's policies. So long as pirates paid the entry fee and followed the rules, they could land and resupply freely. With Wang Ji's power backing the island, it remained a pirate paradise, still unchanged even in the Blackbeard era. 2 weeks later, Kane lounged shirtless in beach shorts, all relaxed and bone-loose in a deck chair. Violet sat to his left with iced orange juice. Speed to his right, presenting meteorite fragments. They tended to him like nurses, offering a drink here, a snack there. Boring, Kane sighed, staring up at the sky. Because they sailed under the beast's flag, no pirate dared to test them. The most excitement they'd had were the occasional Sea King attacks. Violet, how far away is Hachinosu? He asked. Mr. Kane, I can see it, Violet said. Her clairvoyance, able to survey targets up to 4,000 kilometers away, had already picked out Hachinosu's famously skull-shaped building. We're almost there. Kane sprang up, as if recovering from a near-fatal illness. Then let's speed this up. He waved his hand, and the calm sea answered with a sudden, strong wind. The Raikugo's sails filled, and the ship leapt forward. Violet had never stopped marveling since she boarded. Whenever strange New World weather threatened, Kane would disperse the clouds or call a breeze. This time, he even summoned a gale, cutting what should have been a 3-day trip down to 1. Finally, Kane murmured, studying the outline of Hachinosu Island as it drew near. Ulti and Page 1, come with me to collect the entry fees, the berries. The rest of you, disembark in groups to relax. He looked at Jack. Jack, stay on the ship and protect the Tontata. His reliable brother agreed without complaint. Oh, Page, we get to see Dad. Aren't you happy? Ulti shook Page 1's kin like a child excited about a reunion. Page 1's eyes spun as if his brain were being shaken into a smoothie. Stars. So many stars. When the Raikugo pulled up to the dock, everyone on Hachinosu noticed at once. Isn't that the beast's flag? The beast's pirates have arrived. News of their arrival spread through the island like wildfire. Inside the skull-shaped high rise, Wang Ji listened to a report from a subordinate and shrugged. So long as they pay the island fee and don't break the rules, let them be. Aside from Kaido himself, the members of the Beast's pirates didn't merit his personal welcome. Yes, sir, the subordinate said and left. Chapter 29, Prelude to the War, Hachinosu Island, the dock. The Raikugo eased into the berth, and a small group led by Kane disembarked. The pirates on the quay glanced over at them for a moment, then quickly lost interest. The reason was simple. Including Kane, they were nobodies. No name, no bounty. Aren't they imposters? Why don't I recognize any of them? Someone whispered. You're stupid if you think they dare impersonate the Beast's pirates, another scorned. That's not necessarily true. The timid starve and the bold thrive, a third muttered. They argued among themselves, but none of them dared step forward to test Kane and his crew. It was proof of how effective Wang Ji's training had been. A stewardly-looking pirate with glasses walked up to them, explained the island's rules, and laid out the fees. Every ship entering Hachinosu Island had to pay an admission fee based on tonnage, and the same amount was charged for each day spent there. That's disgusting, Ulti said bluntly, frowning at the daily charge. Paying once might be acceptable, but a daily levy rubbed her the wrong way. The steward remained calm. Please rest assured, sirs, it's worth it. As long as you don't act recklessly on the island, Lord Wangji will guarantee your safety. He handed over a detailed leaflet explaining the island's regulations. Do I need him to protect me? Ulti grumbled. When you're on someone else's turf, you follow their rules, Kane replied coolly. Speed, pay up. They paid and left the dock. Following their planned rendezvous, Kane found a tavern and met the Shichibukai Hanafuda. Towering over 5 meters, masked and clad in a black leather coat in the style of the Beast's pirates, Hanafuda looked every inch like their crew. At his feet lay a giant scythe, the blade chained to a meteor hammer. Meeting a Shichibukai openly in a crowded tavern didn't seem strange. After all, a Shichibukai doing business with the Beast's pirates wasn't exactly headline news. The world government couldn't dictate a Shichibukai's private dealings. Papa! Ulti cried, flinging herself into Hanafuda's arms. Page 1, calmer but with red-rimmed eyes, drifted to Hanafuda's side and murmured, Papa! For a moment, the tough young woman and the stoic young man showed a soft side. Kane stepped back politely to give them space. A den-den mushi in Kane's pocket began to ring. He pulled it out and answered. A cold voice came through. It's me, King. Something wrong? Kane asked. The Charlotte family has declared war on us, King said. Since Kane had joined, Kaido had felt strong enough to stop being purely defensive and allowed the crew to expand its territory. When one crew expands, another's domain naturally shrinks. This time, the Beast's Pirates' Maul expansion collided with the Big Mom Pirates' ambitions, and neither side would yield. King explained how their goals overlapped. A conflict was unavoidable. Even though Kaido and Charlotte Linlin had a good private relationship, they were professionals who separated personal ties from public duty. Neither would allow personal feelings to block their crew's development. I understand, Kane said and hung up. The Charlotte family. This could be troublesome. Kane scratched the back of his head and briefly missed the quieter days in Wano. Had he not joined partway through, the Big Mom Pirates would currently be stronger than the Beast's Pirates. Except for the youngest, Snack and Smoothie, most of the Sweet Commanders in their 30s were fully matured fighters. Ministers like Perospero, Compote, Daifuku, and Oven were not to be taken lightly. With their many capable siblings, Big Mom's crew was the clear runner-up in the New World. The Beast's Pirates, in the original timeline, had Kaido and King as the only truly top-tier fighters. Queen's strengths were more technological than martial, and Jack was still immature. Though 5 members of the future Flying Six were assembled, Ulti and Page 1 were still growing. The artificial Zoan army and the numbers were only shadows of their full potential. Kane's arrival had greatly strengthened the Beast's Pirates. Not only did they gain a marquee member, they'd also picked up Yamato, whose strength rivaled Queen's. With men like Kane and Yamato present, a fight like this was worth taking. Back in the tavern, Kane shared King's news with Hanafuda and the 3 others. Ulti grew excited. I've been waiting for this day, she shouted. Page 1, who'd been sullen, now had a flicker of excitement in his eyes. Hanafuda nodded with quiet approval. These are the devil fruits I promised Kaido, he said. He waved a hand, and a subordinate brought 3 small boxes, placing them on the table in front of Kane. All 3 are common Zoan types, reticulated python, mongoose, and ox. Common types, no wonder Hanafuda had no qualms about showing them. Kane suddenly understood, but he'd still underestimated how irresistible devil fruits were to pirates. The word alone drew the attention of everyone in the tavern. Heads turned, eyes fixed greedily on the 3 boxes, as if they already contained treasure. Pirates who coveted even such ordinary devil fruits betrayed their true nature. Kane snorted and opened the boxes to inspect them. Satisfied, he closed the lids, tossed them casually to Ulti and Page 1, and said, "No problem, happy to cooperate." He wasn't handling payment, King was. After brief farewells, Ulti and Page 1 left with Kane. Hanafuda's subordinate glanced around and noticed several groups had followed them out. Their intentions were obvious. "No need to send anyone," Hanafuda said. "There's a dangerous aura about that man." Kaido doesn't send fools. 3 kilometers off Hachinosu Island, the Rayquaza cut through a field of shattered hulls as it made for Braid Island. "Damn, Kane, you move too fast," Ulti complained, leaning on the rail and staring at the chaotic sea. She wanted action. "Those small fry pirates aren't the point. The real fight is still ahead," Kane said, and used his ability to summon strong winds to speed the Rayquaza on its way. King hadn't given him much time. "Are we really going to war with the Charlotte family now?" Violet asked, swallowing nervously. She had joined less than half a month ago and already faced a high-stakes conflict. Kane patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, this time it's just over a small island. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin won't personally intervene." If 2 Yonko were to throw down over a single small island, the title would be cheapened. In truth, Big Mom might be testing the Beast's pirate strength, and the Beasts accepting the fight could be a statement of status in the new world. Conditions were favorable. With the 2 captains holding back, the scale of the war could be controlled. Chapter 30, Navy in Action. Just as Kane was racing toward the battlefield, another current in the New World began to stir. On the edge of the Red Line, at one end of the Grand Line, a formidable island rose out of the sea. In front of the island lay a wide, crescent-shaped bay dotted with warships. Behind the port stretched a huge plaza, and beyond that stood an imposing headquarters building. Above its main entrance, 2 blazing emblems proclaimed the island's purpose: Marines. This was Marineford, the world's symbol of order in the age of piracy. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, incoming intelligence from the New World. A tense Marine colonel, clutching a stack of reports, knocked on the heavy oak door of the Fleet Admiral's office. Inside were 5 senior officers. Behind the large desk sat a broad-shouldered man with a striking black afro, frog-eye glasses perched on his nose, and a long beard braided with care. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the strategist. On the sofa to the left of the desk sat a white-haired but energetic woman, Vice Admiral Tsuru, Chief of Staff. Directly opposite the desk, 3 more figures lounged on another sofa. One with short, curly black hair and a casual bearing, one wearing the marine cap with a stern face and a rose pinned to his chest, and one with curly black hair and a green eye patch over his forehead, his eyes half-lidded. Sengoku, Vice Admiral Tsuru, Admiral Kizaru, Admiral Akainu, Admiral Aokiji, the colonel blurted, saluting in nervous haste, not realizing how many top brass were present. "What's the report?" Sengoku asked. The colonel snapped to attention and handed over the papers. "The G5 branch reports unusual movements from the Beast's pirates and the Charlotte Linlin pirates. They're gathering forces and converging on a small island." Every face in the room hardened. The movements of the New World's great powers were always a top priority for the Marines. At best, they reshaped regional balance, and at worst, they unleashed waves of chaos that swept the seas. "When did this come in?" Sengoku pressed. "Just now," the colonel replied. Sengoku let out the slightest breath but kept his brow tightly furrowed. He scanned the pages and passed them to Vice Admiral Tsuru. The document circulated silently among the officers. "These giants really can't sit still," Sengoku muttered. "Not surprising," Tsuru said calmly. "Since Kaido has been active in the New World, this was bound to happen. If it isn't the Charlotte Linlin pirates forming up, it would be the Whitebeard forces. Eventually they clash." She added, "From the intelligence, Kaido and Charlotte Linlin don't seem likely to intervene personally. They're staying put in their territories for now." Sengoku said, rubbing his temples. "Still, this looks like a new round in the struggle for dominance in the New World." The thought of another conflagration worried him. If the fighting escalated and drew in the Whitebeard pirates, it could spiral into worldwide chaos. What would the Marines do then? Akainu Sakazuki's reply was sharp and immediate. "If they're sending only vice captains and subordinates, we should move together, strike, and annihilate their assembled elites in one sweep." Kizaru Borsellino drawled with exaggerated interest. "Oh, is Sakazuki-san really suggesting that?" Aokiji Kuzan, speaking in his usual lazy tone but cutting to the heart of the matter, said, "It's not impossible for the 3 of us to act simultaneously and accomplish that, but we must weigh the risk that Kaido or Charlotte Linlin may personally intervene, and if one of them falls, the other might retaliate. Whitebeard might not sit this out either." "Afraid of this, afraid of that. Are we just going to let pirates run free? Sakazuki snapped, voice booming. Even taking out someone like King or Katakuri would be a huge victory for the Marines. It weakens our enemies. Sakazuki, Sengoku said, shaking his head, you're an admiral now. Learn to look at the bigger picture. Sakazuki, newly promoted, still thought like a vice admiral, believing the right answer was always to attack. But Sengoku knew the truth. Sending every high-ranking strike force would invite eyes from every corner of the pirate world. The Marines couldn't risk being seen as the ones who challenged the entire new world. Sakazuki snorted but fell silent, the hostility still in his expression. Vice Admiral Tsuru then spoke. We don't need to intervene in a fight between pirate crews. Let them fight it out. Whoever dies is one less problem for us. That's the policy, yes, said Sengoku, thinking aloud. But we must guard against any unforeseen consequences. He turned to Kizaru. Borsalino, you've been stationed in the New World for a long time and know the situation. Your glint fruit gives you unparalleled mobility. Go observe, gather information on both crews' strengths. He glanced at Sakazuki. And Sakazuki's point isn't without merit. We shouldn't be overly cautious. If an opportunity presents itself, you may act. Sakazuki's expression lightened on hearing that. Understood, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Kizaru rose lazily and saluted. He inwardly wondered whether eating the glint fruit had been a blessing or a curse. Now almost every urgent, dangerous, or rapid response task fell to him. When would he ever get regular work hours? Braid Island, a small, otherwise unremarkable isle included on maps mainly because of its proximity to the Beast's pirates' territory. But it had one special advantage. It produced exceptionally high-quality wheat. The island's unique ecology nurtured a thriving bread industry, and what once brought prosperity to its people had now painted a target on their backs. Charlotte Linlin, besides her obsession with collecting so-called husbands, was famously incapable of resisting sweets. Her expansion priorities always included islands with top-tier ingredients and gourmet specialties. That was why Braid Island had caught the attention of the Charlotte Linlin pirates. Chapter 31. The War Begins. On the sea, two massive fleets faced each other, neither willing to give an inch. Leading the eastern line was an extraordinary ship, a San Juan Wolf-style warship dressed up like a confection. Frosting covered its rails, candy canes rose along the deck, and a huge two-tiered cake sat on the stern. It looked delicious. More striking than its appearance, though, was that the ship was alive. The bow was a smiling gingerbread face that hummed a cheerful tune. The ship was Queen Mama Chanter. Its notorious fame matched its bizarre look. Queen Mama Chanter was the flagship of the Big Mom Pirates, the vessel of Charlotte Linlin, who had fought across the south and north. But at the prow now was not Linlin. A tall man stood there, half his face hidden by a scarf, Charlotte family's masterpiece, Charlotte Katakuri. Katakuri, Cracker's forces from Totoland will arrive in another hour. We still have an hour and a half until the agreed time. That's plenty, said a brown-skinned woman in a pink-striped, form-fitting jumpsuit, a long sword at her waist. Charlotte Smoothie, one of the Sweet Commanders and the kingdom's juice minister, whose long legs marked her long-leg lineage, watched as Katakuri awaited reinforcements. On the opposing side, the Beast's pirates were also ready. King stood with his wings folded. Yamato leaned weakly on the rail, impatience written on her face. When will Kane arrive? I can't wait any longer, she grumbled. The Beasts had already exhausted nearly all their strength preparing for this battle. Even Yamato, who had been working in Wano Country, had been called out. Soon, King said without turning his head, staring intently toward the enemy. He wasn't worried about Kane. With Kane's speed, the person would make it even if the ship didn't. Time ticked by in the tight silence. Then, at the agreed hour, both fleets opened fire. Cannonballs streamed like a storm, so dense they crashed into one another and exploded in midair. The thunder of those impacts was the signal to charge. On the shore of Braid Island, the Beast's pirates and the Big Mom pirates, blades honed and spirits roaring, broke like a dam and surged at each other, weapons flashing. Despite the overwhelming momentum on both sides, the outcome still hung in the balance. King beat his wings. Flames surged from the back of his head as his body shot upward, a blazing meteor tearing through the sky. Flames engulfed the enormous katana in his hand. His gaze locked on Katakuri below, and he swung. Fire Dragon Emperor! A torrent of infernal fire erupted, splitting and twisting in the air into more than a dozen lifelike, roaring dragon shapes. The blazing forms were viscous and hot like molten lava. Truly worthy of being called a calamity of fire, Smoothie muttered, brows drawn. The heat alone sapped moisture from her skin. Her squeeze ability, which pulled moisture from objects, worked poorly against such scorching flames. From one perspective, King was the natural nemesis of her fruit. Leave him to me, Katakuri said calmly. He pressed his left hand hard against the deck. The solid wood shivered and then softened, turning into a surging, viscous sea of white mochi. Flowing mochi. As Katakuri waved his arm, the mochi flowed upward and quickly hardened into a vast mochi wall dozens of meters wide, arcing high above everyone's heads. A streak of pitch black spread from Katakuri's hand as armament haki washed over the white mochi like ink, sealing and hardening it. Boom! Boom! The fire dragon slammed into the darkened mochi barrier, roaring and exploding on contact. The mochi, reinforced by top-tier armament haki, held, yet under King's relentless heat, its surface repeatedly melted and reformed. Katakuri's endurance and haki could hold it as long as needed, but he refused to merely wait. With a low snort, Katakuri's right arm turned into flowing mochi, wrapping itself around the handle of his trident, Mogura. Black armament haki coiled around the trident's tip like a living thing. With a thought, the top of the giant mochi wall split open, forming a hole. Katakuri burst through it like lightning, his mochi arm spinning at high speed. Mochi pound! The trident whirred like a drill, shrieking as it drove straight toward King in midair. King showed no fear. He shifted into his pteranodon hybrid form. Horns lengthened, arms merged with wings, and a great wingspan flared. He reached to the back of his head, drew himself taut like an invisible bow, and released. Imperial Dragon Blast. The explosive force propelled King faster than the eye could follow. He became a black meteor, a weapon of devastating kinetic energy, and met Katakuri's mochi pound head-on. Bang! Countless streaks of black haki cracked through the sky. A visible circular shockwave radiated outward like a tsunami, sweeping down and sending weaker pirates tumbling. Below on the shore, the fighting roared even more fiercely. "Hey, Biscuit Man, you're my opponent!" Yamato cried, eyes blazing, her kanabo leveled at a tall, long-bearded, middle-aged warrior clad in biscuit-style armor. "Don't give me stupid nicknames," Charlotte Cracker snapped, his palms clapping in rapid rhythm. With each clap, biscuit crumbs erupted and swelled into an army of biscuit soldiers. Dozens upon dozens of figures shaped exactly like him, each with a shield in one hand and a sword in the other, marching in perfect formation and crushing everything in their path. "Perfect! Come on!" Yamato laughed, charging forward without hesitation. Kanabo raised. "Thunder Bagua!" she shouted. The kanabo glowed as black armament haki wrapped around it, a crackling hum of power. Yamato drove it into the biscuit soldier at the front. Cracker barked orders for their shields to be raised, but it was too late. The kanabo struck the giant biscuit shield and shattered it like fragile pastry. The club's momentum didn't falter. It slammed through, crushing the soldier's head with overwhelming force. Chapter 32, Big Sign and Dessert Star Whoosh. The biscuit soldier shattered into pieces. Yamato picked up a fragment out of curiosity, popped it into her mouth, and crunched. Delicious! Biscuit soldier, you've got some real skill, she said, eyes bright. Cracker staggered in disbelief. How is this possible? My biscuit defense broken so easily. He was too stunned to speak. Although the name Biscuit didn't sound threatening, Cracker had trained his soldiers to be stronger than steel, and yet this opponent had shattered one with a single blow. "Who are you? State your name," Cracker roared, refusing to accept it. Yamato scratched the back of her head and grinned a little sheepishly. "I'm Yamato, the general of Wano Country." That name tugged at Cracker's memory. He searched desperately through what he knew of the beast's pirates and suddenly realized, "Aren't you Kaido's daughter?" Yamato barked a laugh. "I'm not Kaido's daughter. I'm Yamato. Just me." Cracker couldn't make sense of the contradiction, but he wasn't here to argue. He ordered his biscuit soldiers to attack while staying at the rear, continuously producing new ones to swarm her. Yamato swung her kanabo and fought through them. On the other side of the battlefield, Queen strode forward with a cylindrical ammo box on his back and a Gatling gun in hand. "Ha ha ha! Taste my newly developed playgrounds." He sprayed rounds indiscriminately into the crowd. Bullets carrying viruses struck both pirates and foes. Those hit began choking, clutching their throats and collapsing, gasping for air. Queen laughed up at the sky. "Ha ha! This is the power of science." "Big meatball, don't get carried away," Smoothie said coldly. With a casual swing of her blade, she sent a flying slash straight toward Queen. "Who are you calling Big Meatball? I call this plump." Queen snapped, opening fire. Clang, clang, clang. The bullets slammed against Smoothie as if hitting iron and ricocheted away. "You must be joking. These have no effect at all." Smoothie suddenly frowned, clutching her neck as pain twisted her features. Queen laughed triumphantly. "Did you think I hadn't prepared for that? Even if the plague rounds don't hit the body directly, when the warheads break, they release a virus gas. There's no avoiding inhaling it." He crowed at his own cleverness, certain he was the smartest in Mads, but his smile froze the next instant. Smoothie grabbed both sides of her body and wrung as if squeezing a wet cloth. Her body contorted into a grotesque pretzel, and green liquid seeped from the twisted crevices. As the toxin was expelled, her complexion cleared. "I almost fell for your trick," she breathed. The squeeze fruit's power to squeeze out moisture made Smoothie the natural counter to airborne toxins. She relaxed slightly, but kept her guard up. "Next time I won't let my guard down. Big meatball." Her eyes went cold. She raised her sword and charged. "Plump," Queen yelled, swelling and deforming into his Brachiosaurus human beast form. "Wedding banquet hot punch." His mechanical right arm ignited and slammed toward Smoothie. Meanwhile, though each of the two All-Stars and Yamato had found an opponent, the rest of the beasts were struggling. Without Sane, they were facing an extra sweet commander, and the lack of high-end fighters began to show. Phosphor, Black Maria, and Sasaki took injuries one after another. The other headliners fared even worse. Yamato's side cleaved through the ranks like a hot knife through butter, but there was a lot of butter. Yes, she could shatter a biscuit soldier with one strike, but Cracker's rate of replenishment was relentless. He only had to spend stamina to keep producing them. Ice Fang! Yamato, transformed into her human beast form, exhaled a blast of freezing air. Where the chill passed, biscuit soldiers froze in place. Divine Speed, White Serpent Drive. Yamato stamped the ground and pushed her speed to the limit, a white blur darting among the frozen soldiers. Bang, bang! She swung her kanabo, shattering one soldier after another. Crack, crack, crack! Cracker laughed. "I can make as many biscuit soldiers as I want." He clapped, and 6 more rose up in front of Yamato in an instant. "So annoying," Yamato muttered. A single biscuit soldier was simple to handle, a few were manageable, but the constant reappearance was the problem. Unless she could cut through all of them at once before Cracker could react, the fight would become an endless loop of her smashing soldiers and Cracker recreating them until one side collapsed from exhaustion. Cracker had also laid out 4 6-armed shield soldiers around himself, fully protecting his person. Yamato needed one decisive strike to break the shell. Queen, by contrast, was in a tight spot. Smoothie's squeeze ability neutralized half of his arsenal. Against someone immune to airborne toxins, he had no choice but to fight up close. Where the hell is that sign? Did King even notify him? Queen ground his teeth as Smoothie's slashes left small cuts across his form. He could only grit his teeth and hold on. Smoothie, having absorbed moisture from teammates and enemies to enlarge both body and blade, stood relaxed and towering as a juice giant. Even Queen's proud ancient zone strength didn't intimidate her. "Big meatball, looks like you'll lose this war," she said with a smile. Once Snack defeated Phosphor and freed his hands, victory would swing completely to the Charlotte family. Chapter 33. Kane, here. It looks like the Big Mom Pirates are going to win. Kizaru, watching from the far side of the battlefield, had come to the same conclusion. If nothing unexpected happened, he looked up, suddenly alert. The formerly clear sky had been swallowed by dark clouds, as if a lead-gray roof had been pulled over it. A fierce wind blew between heaven and earth, making coats and banners on the battlefield snap and howl. "Sorry I'm late." A thunderous voice boomed from the clouds. "Huh, didn't they say Kaido wouldn't come?" Smoothie snapped her head up, pupils narrowing. From the heart of the storm, a long, massive, dragon-shaped silhouette slid through the darkness. At first glance, it looked exactly like Kaido. Then she shook her head. No, Kaido doesn't sound like that. Haha, of course it isn't Big Brother Kaido. Queen, battered and exhausted, felt a fresh surge of energy roll through him. He hated to admit it, but Kane really did possess power that could overturn the tide of this battle. The outcome of the clash between the Beast's pirates and the Charlotte family suddenly felt uncertain. The clouds began to spin, whipped by an invisible, colossal hand into a bottomless black vortex. From its center, a majestic emerald dragon head slowly emerged. Oh, what a lively scene. King shoved Katakuri back with a thrust of his sword and seized the chance to bark. Enough talk, Kane. Get in here. Understood, Mr. King. Kane's will stirred. The dark sky constricted and rain began to fall. First a drizzle, then a steady downpour that quickly turned into a torrential curtain. Kizaru's face tightened into a bitter expression. A previously unknown mythical zone that could control the weather? A mini Kaido? How had the Beast's pirates found someone like this and kept him hidden? Queen's impatience flared. Idiot! What good's your rain? Who do you think you'll drown with rain? He was also secretly worried that the rain might help Smoothie grow even more. Fortunately for him, the squeeze fruit didn't seem to have that property. Queen was too worked up to notice the cold, unreadable look on Smoothie's face. He did, however, spot a more useful opportunity. Don't rush. Look at Cracker over there. Yamato, do it, Kane said calmly. On this melee-strewn battlefield, massive techniques were risky to use, but one simple fact remained exploitable. Cracker's biscuits, no matter how baked hard, were still made of biscuit that softened when wet. Devil fruit rules could be strange, but water-beating biscuit was a reliable one. If the biscuits softened, even Cracker's greatest defenses would be vulnerable. All right, Yamato answered and swung her spiked club at a column of biscuit soldiers. To her shock, wherever the club passed, the soldiers collapsed and shattered with barely any resistance. It was nothing like the rock-hard bodies she'd seen before. Now they crumbled as if they'd been nothing more than damp sand. Soaked, softened? Queen gaped, then realization hit him. Using the rule that biscuits go soft when wet? Kane, you clever bastard. Indeed, the soaked biscuit soldiers couldn't even stand up to Luffy's Gear 1 Gatling. Yamato vaulted up, club raised to smash at the biscuit soldier, concealing Cracker's true body. Ice Purge slash. Her club slammed down, icy cold energy biting through the air. Inside the biscuit husk, Cracker's face twisted with ferocity. Don't look down on me? Do you think mere rain can beat me? He poured armament hockey through the biscuit shell, the dark sheen sweeping over it like a tide. Metal rang on metal as Yamato's club and Cracker's greatsword crashed together, hockey sparks scattering. He'd blocked it, but only barely. A hairline crack appeared on the seemingly indestructible surface. In an instant, it spiderwebbed across the whole soldier like ice after a pebble hits a frozen pond. The biscuit construct began to fracture, then collapse, and Cracker himself was exposed. Purple hair, grimace contorted with pain, seated where his biscuit body had been. Yamato's club kept coming down. Cracker flung up his sword to parry, but the blow still landed, launching him back. The frigid force, mixed with Yamato's raw strength, slammed into him. It hurled at him with a sting that went straight to his bones. It hurt so much. Cracker had always been terrified of pain. That was why he hid inside biscuits. He could barely tolerate a pinprick, let alone this. He staggered, face scrunched in agony, hands numb from the frost. As Yamato charged again, Cracker's fear flickered into a desperate ferocity. He flexed wrists chilled and stiff, flames at the tips of his hair flaring as anger overcame him. Again, Firecracker head! Yamato's momentum flashed like a rainbow as she swung the club wide and charged. I told you not to give me nicknames, Cracker barked, meeting her full on. He called out a technique from inside the fight. Thunder Bagua. Wave. Pretzel. The two clashed wildly, techniques and hockey colliding in a violent exchange. Kane let them be for now. He needed to find a target of his own. Heat Wave Fist! A roar erupted, and the air simply heated to a blistering degree. A burly figure lunged at Kane, a fist wrapped in a rolling wave of heat smashing toward the dragon. Wherever the heat swept through the falling rain, the drops vaporized into a white cloud of steam. Oven's face lit with eager anticipation. As a heat fruit user, he could spit out air so hot it would ignite a mountainside. This strike should have burned through anything. Kane ought to be screaming from the pain. Kane narrowed his eyes and didn't dodge. He let the blistering current strike his massive, scaled form. Steam puffed around him, the rain turning to mist before it reached him. Is that all? Kane's voice was casual in the haze. This temperature's only fit for heating my bathwater. Oven's grin faltered as the Emerald Dragon's tone stayed cool and unbothered. A mere heat wave was nothing in front of Kane, Rayquaza, who could control the weather. It was as if no one else's fire techniques mattered. With a thought, Kane drew the scorching air that had surrounded Oven away from the man and gathered it within the dragon's maw. Return to sender, he sent back the heat. Heat wave, Oven cried out. Under Kane's control, the airflow became far hotter and far more violent than when Oven had released it. It tore back across the field and slammed into the ground where Oven stood. What? How was this possible? Oven's pupils constricted, his mind blanked. The scene before him proved otherwise. The heat wave he'd produced had been returned at an even more terrifying intensity. Whoosh! The redirected heat wave engulfed Oven. Thanks to the hot berry, the temperature didn't burn him through, but the overwhelming blast of wind pinned him, left him unable to move, and hurled him away. Ugh! Oven hit the muddy shore hard, his momentum sending him tumbling like a rag doll. He carved a gully tens of meters long into the earth. Damn it! He struggled to crawl out of the pit, face smeared with mud, filled with humiliation and fierce refusal to be beaten here. He was a man destined to be a sweet commander. He could not fall like this. Then he saw the sea. A plan lit in his eyes. He bolted for the water, his arms already glowing red with heat, the air around them shimmering. Who? Oven plunged his hot, iron-like hands into the ocean. Sizzle! Steam hissed as the seawater near his palms began to boil. The calm blue began to bubble and change color under the infernal heat, quickly turning into a churning orange-red sea of scalding water that radiated deadly heat waves. Try this, he roared. Heat sea, myriad arrivals. The boiling sea exploded outward from his hands. A massive 10-meter-wide column of scalding water, as soupy and hot as magma, shot up and hurtled toward Kane in the sky. Oh, playing with hot water attacks? Kane said lightly. Then I'll answer with this, he added, and opened his maw. Ice beam. A stream of extreme cold poured from Kane's mouth and slammed into the hot water column. Bang! The collision triggered a massive explosion. At its center, the column vaporized, creating a towering cloud of steam that swallowed Kane's shape. Katakuri, engaged with King nearby, suddenly shivered. His eyes flared with an unprecedented mix of panic and fury, as if he'd glimpsed a terrible future. You saw a bad future? King taunted, playful in tone. As one of the New World's top fighters, Katakuri had mastered the advanced observation haki known as Future Sight. With it, he even managed to manifest elemental effects through his mochi berry. Seeing the future provided an opening. Arrow Imperial, King's eyes gleamed. He seized the moment of Katakuri's distraction to spread his wings and launch a furious assault, striking while his enemy's attention was elsewhere. He had no intention of a fair duel. This was a battlefield, and only the victor took everything. Katakuri ignored much of King's barrage, letting some blows strike through to buy time. He spat blood but kept his gaze fixed on his brother near the shore, yelling as loud as he could. Oven, jump into the sea, as deep as possible. It had to be now. The terrifying future he'd seen, the one where his brother was instantly annihilated, was closing in. What? Oven's alarm spiked. Whoosh! The instant Katakuri's warning fell, a black meteor tore through the steam cloud, streaking straight for Oven. Double edge! In seconds, Kane, high above, plunged back to the mortal world. He coiled his massive, jet-black dragon body into a ball and, like an asteroid, drove down with unfathomable kinetic force and pressure, smashing into the coastline where Oven had been standing. Boom! The impact detonated across the battlefield, a sound so violent it could have burst eardrums. Earth and rock shot into the air like geysers. Nearby seawater was driven back, forming towering waves that revealed seabed that had never seen light. Pirates along the shore were struck as if by an invisible titan. Some were sent flying with noses and mouths bleeding, their fates uncertain. Silence fell instantly over the field. You've got to be kidding, Smoothie murmured, frozen as she stared at the impact site. Where a flat coastline had once lain, now yawned an enormous bottomless crater. The backflowing water roared into it. After the war, that hole would become a natural deep-water port. Even Queen's eyes bulged. His sunglasses flew off. How could Kane be this strong? Kizaru, idly watching from the edge of the battlefield, pushed his brown shades up the bridge of his nose and spoke in his usual teasing drawl, though the shock in his wide eyes was obvious. My, these youngsters are truly something. From the distance of their fight, Katakuri, wounded and bleeding from King's earlier strikes, ignored his injuries and shouted, "Aladdin, Praline, go save Oven." "Yes." The fishman couple answered, immediately breaking away from combat and charging into the surging sea at full speed. "Humph. Do you still have time to worry about family now, Katakuri?" King's rare hint of admiration was voiced like a challenge, and he pressed his attack even harder. Respect for a worthy opponent meant giving everything. Thud. A dragon claw gripped the rim of the crater. Kane, now in his human dragon form, hauled himself out of the pit, looking slightly disheveled. "Hiss! My whole body's screaming," he grumbled, clutching his waist with a grimace. He'd known better than to drain himself so fully using such an exhausting ultimate move, but the cost had been worth the effect. "Bastard! You dare beat my brother until he's close to death." A man with short yellow hair, wearing a blue jacket and a belt patterned like a lamp, leapt out, face twisted with grief and outrage. "I, Charlotte Daifuku, will make you pay." He rubbed his abdomen energetically. A gray mist billowed from his midsection, and from it materialized a lamp genie, blue-purple, wielding a long-handled greatsword. Chapter 35. Kizaru takes action. Die! Demon Hunt. At Daifuku's command, the Lampberry Man floated into position before Kane, raised its massive saber, and slashed down. Kane tilted his head as the blade cut through the air and slammed into his shoulder. Clang. Metal on metal rang out, sparks flying. Kane barely moved. Only a faint, quickly fading white mark marred his shoulder. "You want to avenge your brother, and this is the best you can do?" Kane sneered. "You're even weaker than Oven," he added. "Ah, damn you! How dare you look down on me?" Daifuku roared to the sky, furious, and urged the Lampberry Man onward. A continuous storm of slashes rained down on Kane. At the same time, Snack, fresh from inflicting a grave wound on Who's Who, rushed in to join the assault. Boiling Berry, Thin Robe Slash. Snack shouted as a blade of burning heat cut toward Kane. Another flame-type attack. No one wanted the Flame Berry. A dark, clawed form materialized in front of the heat blade. Dragon Claw! Kane blocked the strike. Just as he was being encircled, a San Juan wolf approached from afar. "We finally made it!" Ulti called from the prow, watching the chaotic fight with a mix of excitement and irritation. "That Kane is something else. Why didn't he take us with him first?" "Big Brother Kane is probably afraid we'd get in trouble," Page 1 guessed, scanning the main fighters on the ship. "Besides Jack, no one here can handle that level of combat." "Say that again, little Page." Ulti snapped, bristling, and grabbed her brother by the neck. "Am I not strong, your sister?" Strong. My bad." Page 1 wheezed, eyes watering as he slapped at Ulti's hand. "Punishment's one thing, but let me breathe." While the siblings bickered, the Raikugo closed in on the fray. East by north, 15 degrees, 1,528 meters. Enemy ship spotted, one of the crew called. On deck, Violet used her ability to guide the gunners. Bang, bang! The Raikugo's broadside cannons fired with deadly precision. Several cannonballs screamed through the air and punched into an enemy vessel, erupting into flowers of fire. The ship began to take on water and list. Pirates scrambled and jumped overboard to escape. Target hit. Next ship, east by south. Violet suppressed her excitement and kept scanning. "Kane has good taste," Ulti said, folding her arms in a big sister tone. With Violet guiding the shots, their cannons would find their marks, but Ulti wanted more. "Speed, get me a small boat," she ordered. Close quarters combat was where she thrived. "Yes, Lady Ulti." Speed hurried to prepare a launch large enough for a dozen. Because they were at sea and Ulti was a devil fruit user, Speed sensibly allotted extra crew for safety. "Excellent. Little Page, with me." Ulti hauled Page 1 aboard, and they cut their launch toward the center of the naval melee. The Beast's pirates and the Big Mom pirates were already engaged in boarding actions. Jack, the ship's strongest, had been left to guard the Rayquaza by Kane. As Ulti and Page 1 stormed an enemy deck, the Charlotte family noticed the Rayquaza and opened fire. Jack drew twin scimitars and began to intercept incoming cannonballs. With Violet's accurate direction and the Rayquaza's heavy cannon support, the tide at sea began to turn toward the beast's pirates. On land, Kane's fight heated up. Daifuku had already been thrown clear. Only Snack remained tangled with Kane. Snack's slashes shimmered with heat as he pressed the attack. Kane's eyes flashed, his claws carved the air. "Air blade," he roared. A storm of compressed air slashes erupted and met Snack's fire-forged cuts with thunderous collisions. Snack cursed under his breath. How did Kane keep fighting without tiring? He kept swinging at a frantic pace until his arms ached and swelled, his swordplay slowed. Opportunity. Extreme speed. Kane's gaze became a bright flash. The tall dragon man vanished from sight, leaving only a warped ripple of air where he'd stood. Alarm flared in Snack's pupils. His instincts overcame the pain. He brought his greatsword up horizontally. Bang! A crushing impact sent the corpulent Sweet Commander flying like a kite with a snapped string. He arced through the sky and vanished from the battlefield. Kane breathed out slowly. One less Sweet Commander. This battle had just shifted. For a moment, he let his guard drop. Yasakani's sacred jewel. Light rained from the sky. Countless dazzling bullets of pure light descended and struck Kane's position. Explosions erupted where they hit. Combatants from both the Beast's pirates and the Big Mom pirates froze at the sudden, blinding assault. "Kane!" Yamato bellowed, the first to react. Fury gave her no patience for Cracker. Disregarding her own defense, she swung her spiked club with everything she had at the already disadvantaged Cracker. Cracker flew as if he'd been launched by a bat, rocketing backward at a speed that blurred the air. "Mink Sovereign!" cried King. He abandoned his tangle with Katakuri, hands darting to the back of his head as he launched himself like an arrow toward the intruder. The intruder was Admiral Kizaru. He'd been watching King, and before King could reach him, he blurred into light and reacquired a human form, completely unharmed. The showers of light bullets that had descended on Kane were his doing, and those same shots had to be abruptly halted when everyone surged. "Kawaii ne!" Kizaru waved a languid hand across his chest, pinching his fingers as if to show how close he'd been to danger. "Almost got hit." "Stop lying, Borsellino," King answered coldly. "Can I take your actions just now as the Marines declaring war on the Beast's pirates?" On the ground, Katakuri, trident in hand, shouted, "The Marines interfering in a fight between us and the Beast's pirates. Do you want to anger two emperors at once?" Faced with an external threat, the Marines, the crews of two emperors, naturally put aside their differences. That was precisely what the Marines feared. No, I was just on vacation," Kizaru protested, waving his hands. His excuse sounded thin to everyone. "I just happened to see little brother Kane being heroic and got a little itchy. Couldn't resist a friendly spar." "Is that so? I also want to spar with you, Admiral Kizaru." Kane's voice cut through the dust below. "Dragon Pulse," Kane answered, surging a dazzling shockwave of energy toward Kizaru at lightning speed. Chapter 36, End of the War Boom. The shockwave tore through Kane's abdomen without slowing, its force shooting upward. A thick layer of dark clouds split open, forming a circular hole, and a long absent beam of golden sunlight fell like a spotlight onto the blood-stained battlefield. From the smoke and dust of the explosion, Kane's figure rose into that light. He was a sorry sight, his body scorched, marked by blast wounds, blood hanging from him in great globs. He hadn't even reacted in time. He had taken the brunt of the Yasakani Sacred Jewel's power head-on. "Thank you, Admiral Kizaru," Kane said, a bloody smile on his lips. "You made me realize how weak I still am." Within the Beast's pirates, Kane's position as the strongest under Kaido and King had made him complacent. He had to be reminded how many powerful people there were in the world. In the air, Kizaru, brushing his lightly stubbled chin, watched with interest as his body slowly returned to normal. "I have a feeling that if I let you keep getting stronger, it will be very bad for the world's peace," he said. "Then come try to stop me." The flames behind King's head vanished. As a Lunarian, he could extinguish his fire at will, sacrificing defense for extreme speed. In the next instant, King was gone from his original position. A dark blade sliced through the air. an after-image of motion slashing toward Kizaru so fast that the sound lagged behind it. Kizaru's pupils pinched. There was no time to dodge. The lethal blade loomed larger and larger. Years of fighting made Kizaru instinctively cross his arms before him, bracing. Though he had eaten the shiniberry and moved with the speed of light, his human reflexes limited the power. Bang! The blade, poured full of force, hit and sent him flying. Oh, it seems this is as far as it goes, Kizaru mused as he flew backward. When I get back, Mr. Sengoku shouldn't blame me. With King and Katakuri cooperating, even he couldn't promise a victory. If the fight dragged out until Kaido or Charlotte Linlin arrived, things would turn dangerous. He was about to hit the sea when he twisted deftly, producing a dazzling light from his hand. Yata no Kagami. A blinding ray shot up, using the surface of the sea like a mirror, forming a brilliant path that climbed into the sky. Kizaru split into countless streams of light and merged with them. In an instant, he was gone, high above. Time to go back. I must tell Mr. Sengoku and the others what's happening here, he said, and then he vanished without looking back. On the Braid Island battlefield, the flames behind King's head quietly reignited. Katakuri withdrew his trident and relaxed his stance. Neither he nor King pursued. Besides being unable to catch Kizaru, they had no reason to chase. The shiniberry made retreat as easy as advance. If Kizaru wanted to run, even Kaido or Charlotte Linlin couldn't stop him. Kane exhaled. In his current state, he had no initiative against Kizaru, couldn't beat him, couldn't escape him. Suddenly, a white blur flashed past his eyes and a sharp pain exploded in his chest. He fell to the ground. Kane, are you all right? Why are you down? Yamato cried, tears in her eyes, grabbing Kane's shoulders and shaking him. Stupid. Stop shaking, I can't breathe, Kane rasped. Eh? Really? Yamato widened her eyes and immediately stopped. Kane watched her weeping for a moment, then reached up and wiped her tears away. Don't worry, I won't fall before we realize our dreams. Really? Yamato blinked. Of course, Kane replied, smiling. Pinky promise? Yamato hooked her pinky out, and Kane linked his with hers. Pinky promise, cross my heart, never change for 100 years. Their promise made, King ignored the childish display and turned to Katakuri. Continue? But with Kizaru's interference, both forces had paused. Katakuri scanned the battlefield, looking over his kin. Cracker moaning on the ground, Smoothie panting hard, Snack bleeding at the mouth and nose. His gaze lingered on Oven, lying far off, his fate uncertain and his condition pitiful. After a moment of silence, Katakuri said in a low voice, Let's stop here. This sea area is yours. He didn't like it, but if they kept fighting, the Charlotte family's chances of winning were slim. His brothers' and sisters' lives mattered more than the pride of a war. King turned to the field and shouted, We won! The war was over. Oi! The Beast's pirates erupted, arms raised and cheers ringing out. Faces in the Big Mom crew went ashen. The victory didn't just settle Braid Island. It sent a message to the New World. The Beast's pirates had proved themselves stronger than the Big Mom pirates. Katakuri took one long look at Kane before leaving. I'll remember you, he said. If Kane hadn't suddenly appeared on the battlefield and taken out 3 of their important family officers in succession, they wouldn't have lost so quickly. Kane simply shrugged at the warning, unconcerned. Out at sea, the fleet the Charlotte family had brought was mostly destroyed. Their losses were heavy. Katakuri, however, had more pressing concerns. How is Oven? He asked, staring icily at a doctor in a white coat. The doctor swallowed and stammered. Lord Oven has comminuted fractures across his body, plus asphyxiation and cerebral edema from falling into the water. Katakuri grabbed the collar of the doctor and cut him off. Shut up. I don't want to hear useless details. Can he be treated or not? We will do our best, the doctor said, trembling, but Lord Oven's injuries are extremely severe. The other doctors fell silent and focused on the rescue. Understand this, Katakuri said, dropping the doctor. If Oven lives, you live. If Oven dies, he didn't have to finish the sentence. Understood, Lord Katakuri, the doctors said in frantic unison. They knew that this man's tenderness was only for his family. Compared to the terrified medics of the Big Mom pirates, the Beast's pirates' doctors considered themselves lucky. None of their top brass needed treatment now. Their focus was on the mid- and lower-ranked fighters, the lives that, for better or worse, didn't move their KPIs. Chapter 37, Post-War. Inside the Rayquaza's cabin, Kane led a line of high-ranking cadres, walking single file. The sight of him covered in blood drew an alarmed cry from Princess Manchuri, who had been waiting there. "Ah, Kane Lando, you're so badly wounded." Kane spared her a gentle smile despite his injuries. "Yes, I'm afraid I'll trouble you, Princess Manchuri. Please, heal me." Manchuri nimbly hopped onto Kane's shoulder. "Healing tears," she whispered, closing her eyes and clasping her small hands. Crystal-clear tears gathered at the corners of her eyes and fell, one by one, onto Kane's body. Warmth spread through him with each drop, like a bath in hot spring water. He sighed in relief as a comforting current flowed through his limbs. Under the stunned stares of everyone in the cabin, his wounds visibly knit together. Within minutes, every cut and bruise had vanished. "Thank you. I feel completely healed." Kane carefully set the little princess on the table, stood and stretched, feeling no pain at all. The power of the healing berry, so extraordinary it seemed unreal, had done its work. "As long as I could help Kane Lando." Manchuri's cheeks flushed as she smiled shyly. "Wow, that's amazing. Healed instantly." Yamato, curious as if discovering a new continent, leaned over the table so close her face nearly touched Manchuri's. Her magnified expression peered at the tiny princess from every angle. "Wah! So scary!" Startled, Manchuri squealed and darted behind Leo, peeking out with only half her head showing. "Hey, Yamato!" Kane gently pushed Yamato back. "Don't frighten her. She's timid." "Hey, sorry." Yamato pulled back and flashed an apologetic grin, like an eager, obedient dog. "Don't worry, Yamato is a good person." Kane turned to Manchuri. "Could you heal the others as well?" he asked, gesturing toward the people standing behind him. "No problem." Manchuri puffed out her tiny chest and began the work again. Within an hour, the wounded cadres who had accompanied Kane were all restored to health. King watched the whole process in silence, amazed. He quickly understood the strategic value of the little princess's ability. This was a power that could alter the course of a war. He ordered at once, voice hard and immediate. "Princess Manchuri's existence is the highest secret of the beasts. No one is to leak it." "Yes," the cadres replied in unison. A power like that had to be kept hidden. After the others left, King turned to Kane. "From today on, the Tontada tribe will be under your and Yamato's direct management." He hadn't expected Kane, sent out on such a simple errand, to return with such a game-changing asset from Dressrosa. Not only Manchuri, but the woman named Violet out by the ship also had strategic berry abilities. King thought back to Kaido's judgment to recruit Kane. It suddenly seemed even wiser. With that, King bowed and left. The beast's vice-captain had a mountain of affairs awaiting him. The war was over, but the aftermath would be long. On Onigashima, the returning fleet was welcomed by those who had stayed behind with overwhelming jubilation. Drums crashed, firecrackers exploded, and the crowd surged like a roaring tide. In the banquet hall, Kaido's grin hadn't left his face since Kane had first seen him. "Ooh ho ho ho," Kaido roared. "That old hag Linlin is finally going to be beneath me." His glee made Kane wonder whether Kaido had staged the whole campaign simply to outdo an old rival. After rounds of food and psych, it was time for rewards and promotions. "I announced that, starting today, 6 positions above the headliners will be established. The Flying Six," Kaido declared loudly. He called the names: Jack, Who's Who, Sasaki, Black Maria, Ulti, Page 1. The 6 stepped forward. "You are my first-generation Flying Six," Kaido proclaimed. Then, without missing a beat, he added coldly, "But remember, my crew has no room for dead weight. Just like with the All-Stars, if anyone can defeat you, they take your spot." Survival of the fittest was the iron law of the beasts. The banquet hall, previously a mellow celebration, erupted into shouts and clamor. Countless ambitious eyes, like a pack of wolves, turned to the newly named Flying Six, hungry for a chance at glory. Jack and the others met those looks without flinching. "If they can take us, let them try," they said. "Oh ho ho ho," Kaido laughed again, downing more sake. "These are my good subordinates." The next day, Kane returned to the general castle in the flower capital. During his absence, a stack of official business had piled up on his desk. Fukurokuju had handled some of it, but several matters required Kane's decision. Once he finished, Kane introduced a man who had come with him. "This is Riku Dold Thuri," Kane said to Fukurokuju. "From today on, he will assist me in handling Wano's daily political affairs. You will focus on managing the Omnioban and the Ninja Corps. Kane was installing Riku Dole III, formerly the king of Dressrosa, into the role of Wano's prime minister. Fukurokuju was loyal, but power needed to be decentralized, and Riku's experience in governing Dressrosa made him a valuable asset. Riku, for his part, hadn't expected to lose his throne only to find himself administering another country within days, but he greeted Fukurokuju warmly. "I hope we work well together." Fukurokuju showed no sign of displeasure, and after formal greetings, they began the handover. Just as Riku was getting up to speed with Wano's affairs, Yamato burst in from the hallway, waving a newspaper. "Kane, look, the paper's reporting on us." Kane took the broadsheet. The masthead read World Economic News. Morgan's, already? It had only been a few days since the war ended. The front page headline was dramatic. New World Hegemony battle between the Beasts Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates concluded. Kane's mouth twitched. Exaggerated much? It had mostly been clashes between cadre-level fighters, yet under Morgan's pen, it became a contest for New World supremacy. Typical sensational journalism. As he skimmed the article, though, Kane's eyes widened. Morgan's account of the battle was surprisingly accurate, the prose only a little hyperbolic, and there were several clear battlefield photos. How did Morgan's get that close to the action so quickly? Chapter 38, The Bounty of the Sea. As Kane flipped through the newspaper, 2 slips of paper fell out from between the pages. Yamato picked them up from the table and held them up, eyes wide. "Kane, these are our photos." Kane stroked his chin and studied them. One's a wanted poster, and the other is a wanted poster too." Yamato rolled her eyes. "Then why didn't you just say that?" Kane shook his head. "You wouldn't get it. It's a saying." "Is it?" Yamato didn't press it and instead leaned in to admire their pictures. "I look so cool in this one." Indeed. In the photo, Yamato wore a determined expression as she swung her kanabo. Dust streaked across her beautiful face, but only made her look more heroic. Kane's poster captured him at the exact moment he had thanked Kizaru after being gravely wounded, bloodied, yet smiling with such confidence that he somehow looked bolder, not ragged. Kane hadn't noticed anyone taking their picture back then. The photographer must have been incredible. What a shot. What really drew his attention, though, was the figure printed underneath, the bounty. It was high enough to make even Kane blink. "What exactly did Kizaru say after he left?" he muttered. Now truly, it seemed like the whole world knew their names. New World, Tato Land. A chain of 34 islands centered on Cake Island, the Charlotte family's stronghold. Charlotte Linlin, ever larger, was stuffing another huge bite of cream cake into her mouth while staring intently at the wanted posters for Kane and Yamato. "Disaster, Kane? Oni Princess Yamato," she read aloud. "That Kaido has a fine subordinate and a fine daughter," Perospero said, licking his long tongue while holding a candy cane. Hearing a hint of dissatisfaction in Mama's voice, he hurried on. "Mama, don't worry. Our younger siblings are talented. They just need time to grow." This old woman won't wait much longer. Linlin's face darkened as she touched her swollen belly. She was pregnant again, expecting what would be her 84th and 85th children. "I've decided. This will be the last birth." She hadn't been active outside for long, but with Kaido making moves, she couldn't be left behind. It was time for Charlotte Linlin's name to spread across the seas again. Perospero bowed eagerly. "With you leading, Mama, the Charlotte family will reach new heights." Her expression softened at his obedience. "How is Oven doing?" she asked, a rare flash of maternal concern breaking through her appetite-driven mood. Katakuri, who had been silent nearby, answered immediately. "Oven is out of danger, but it will take time before he's fully combat-ready." Linlin's gaze sharpened. "Can he recover fully?" Katakuri's eyes narrowed. "The doctor said it's nothing irreversible." "Mama! Mama! That's good!" Someone squealed. Linlin wiped cream from her lips and smiled broadly, then let him continue as Minister of Baking. "Yes, Mama," Katakuri murmured, relieved. As an older brother, he could do no more for Oven right now. A different part of the new world. A massive ship shaped like a whale cleaved the waves, its mast flying the giant Whitebeard's skull. On the Moby Dick's broad deck, Whitebeard, 64 and still a Titan, sat in his iconic chair, holding 2 wanted posters. "Gurararara! Marco, 2 more impressive youngsters have shown up in the new world," he boomed. Marco, whose hair resembled a pineapple and who doubled as the ship's doctor and First Division commander, checked on Whitebeard's health lazily. Pops, the new world's getting turbulent again. That Kaido doesn't keep quiet for long. Vista, in his deep blue top hat and mustache, shrugged. So what? Worst comes to worst, we take on the beasts. Kaido can't match Pops. Whitebeard laughed, hockey pulsing like heat. Of course not. I am Whitebeard. On another island, a man with red hair sat before a campfire, reading the same newspaper and laughing aloud. These newcomers are something else. His first mate, Ben Beckman, sat cross-legged smoking, maintaining his pistol with one hand. Shanks, what age were you when you got this bounty? Ha ha ha! Who even remembers boring things like that? Shanks set the paper down, picked up a wine bowl, and drank. Let's drink a few more bowls for this. Idiot, then at least remember when to turn the meat. Do you have a fish's memory? Lucky Roo, the crew's stout cook, grabbed Shanks by the collar and shook him. Do you know you're wasting food? That's a crime. The meat on the grate had already begun to char. Shanks threw his hands up, grinning and apologizing with none of a captain's dignity. The crew laughed and teased him, the night filling with good-natured noise. Dressrosa. Foo-foo-foo-foo, I didn't pick the wrong business partner, Doflamingo purred from his throne, reading the paper and chuckling. Young master, our partners are ready to import more weapons from the beasts, Tribal reported enthusiastically. Territories that were closed to us have opened their doors. Having won their war, the beast pirates had expanded their brand. The Doflamingo family had profited handsomely from that influence. Grand Line, Thriller Bark. Gecko Mariah, fat and scowling, held the paper while gruesome images of Kaido's past victims flickered through his mind. Kaido, you bastard, you've recruited another fearsome subordinate. Just wait. When I gather enough powerful shadows to revive those I lost, I'll go to Wano and take your head. He let out a roar. I'll make you feel what it's like to lose your men. He impulsively let go of the paper. It slid from his fingers and fluttered to the deck. The headline was clear. Disaster Kine. Dead or alive. Bounty, 600,000 berries. Chapter 39. The World Government's New Deal. Why am I only 300 million? This is unfair. Yamato clicked off the digits on her fingers. I clearly beat Cracker and a whole lot of other enemies too. Of course, Yamato had used a trick to take Cracker down so fast. Her performance hadn't been spectacular enough to blow everyone away. Her bounty couldn't simply be judged by Cracker's. Maybe it's because you're only half as strong as I am, Kane teased. Kane, what did you say? Yamato lunged at him, flailing arms and legs. I'll duel you. Onigashima. Queen slammed his fist on the table. Why does that brat get a first bounty of 600 million? 6 years of effort, and some kid getting the Marines' attention already. The more infuriating thought was that, given how the Marines were watching, this kid would probably surpass him in a few years. Would he always be second to that kid? How could he compete for Kazuki Hiyori then? Queen's own bounty sat at 860 million berries. Useless. This means nothing. King, sitting calmly beside him, cut in. What matters right now is the world government's new trade proposal. The Beast's pirates had always done business with the world government. Seastone goods made in Wano, weapons, cuffs, cages, were one of the crew's major income sources. Now the world government was demanding something different, not finished products, but raw seastone ore. That single change put the Beasts in a tough spot. Exporting ore stripped away Wano's craftsmanship, the value added that made the trade profitable. Worse, it suggested the world government might have discovered a new, important use for seastone that the Beasts didn't know about. If that were true and the Beasts failed to capitalize on it, they'd lose out in a huge way. Kaido, seated at the head, barked an order. Bring Kane here. He's authorized to handle negotiations with the world government. The war with the Charlotte family had already proven Kane's strength and loyalty. Less than half an hour after he sprinted back from the flower capital, Kane listened as King explained the government's demands. What do you think? Me? Kane hesitated. My guess is they've discovered some special application for seastone and want to exploit that information gap to buy ore at rock-bottom prices. Like what? Queen scoffed. Besides weapons, armor, handcuffs, cages, what other use could there be? Kane smiled. Just suppose, there's a way to embed sea stone in the hull of a ship so it could glide through the calm belt safely. King's eyes widened. If that were possible, the amount the world government was willing to pay for ore would be nothing compared to the profits to be made. The world is divided by the Red Line and the Grand Line into the East, South, West, and North Blues. Flanking the Grand Line are two deadly zones called the Calm Belts, windless seas where conventional sailing can't work. Even worse, massive sea kings patrol their depths, attacking any passing ship. The Calm Belts make regular trade between the Blues impossible without detours around the Red Line, slowing commerce and keeping prices high. If a way existed to cross the Calm Belt, the trade routes between East and South or North and West would open up, and the profits would be enormous. Is that even feasible? King asked Queen. Theoretically, yes, Queen said after a moment. Sea stone contains a component, pyrobrome, or something similar, that can emit energy resembling the sea itself. In theory, it can trick sea kings into thinking a hull is just another part of the sea. Queen frowned. But to fool a sea king, the sea stone would have to cover the entire bottom of the ship. Maybe 1 or 2 ships could be outfitted, but a whole fleet, even the world government, couldn't afford that. Kane shook his head. Don't forget their trump card, Vegapunk. Queen bristled, his fat trembling with anger. You think I'm inferior to that Vegapunk fella? It wasn't just a matter of genius. Vegapunk's reputation was almost supernatural. Even if some other scientist claimed they could thin sea stone down and embed it, the beasts would dismiss it. But Vegapunk had already done the seemingly impossible. Kane continued, what if Vegapunk can make sea stone extremely thin? Like gold, which can be beaten into an ultra-thin sheet, sea stone might be applied so thinly that the cost per ship becomes manageable. Kaido, King, and Queen fell silent. All three had dealt with Vegapunk before, Kaido and King as subjects of his research, Queen as an assistant. If anyone could pull off such a technological miracle, it was Vegapunk. Kane added, quietly, Vegapunk actually succeeded at that. It's also what indirectly led to the Marines' encirclement and suppression of the Kuja pirates. King considered the implications. No matter what, we can't cut off trade with the world government. The beasts traded not only for profit, but to maintain a relationship with the world government. Wano was their fortress, safe from direct interference, but the rest of their networks across the Grand Line and the Four Blues depended on the government's tolerance. The world government's influence had always shadowed the New World and beyond. Red Hair, whose ties run deep, enjoyed favorable relations with the government. Kaido and Big Mom had long relied on underground trade that required the government's quiet acquiescence. Whitebeard, by contrast, stayed in the New World and behaved as if he didn't care about anything else. His lack of worldly desire made him powerful and left him essentially unconstrained by the government. But for everyone else, the cost of losing official channels was unacceptable. Kane weighed the options. Then we trade, but we won't take a loss. We'll raise our price. If the Marines and the world government would soon have ships plated with sea stone, the beast pirates couldn't simply be undercut. King's brow knitted. Raise the price? Kane nodded. We may need the world government's favor, but ultimately we control the sea stone supply. Monopoly rules apply. In a market you dominate, you don't sell yourself short. Kaido waved a massive hand. If you know this well, it's yours to handle. Just don't let me lose money. And so Kane earned a new title, the Beast Pirates Sea Stone Trade Agent. Chapter 40. CP0 Visitors, Kibi, Wano Country. At the northernmost edge of Wano, this was a vast, desolate stretch of land, sparsely populated and harsh. Its status in Wano was akin to Ninguda. Barely anyone wanted to settle here. For the Tontata tribe, though, this inhospitable place was a rare treasure. Bad at detecting lies and preferring to keep to themselves, the Tontata were happiest when people left them alone. How are you all doing? Kane called as he stepped into a clearing where a cluster of Tontata had gathered. Very well, Kane Landau, they replied in chorus. Look, we even planted the seeds you brought, one of them said proudly. Kane felt a flush of relief. He produced a sack of seeds and 2 denden mushi from inside his coat and set them down before the little people. These are crop seeds. I want you to work on breeding higher yield varieties so more mouths can be fed. The Tontata lit up. Agricultural research suited them far better than simple farm labor. Kane Landau is so great, they cheered, beating their tiny chests and promising at once to complete the task. These Den Mushi are for contacting me. If you can, try to find ways to breed them yourselves. Kine had deliberately chosen Den Mushi over Wano's native thought snails. The snail's mental waves were weak and relied on a centrally leading snail to relay signals. If that leader was compromised, all communication in the area could be cut off, unreliable compared to Den Mushi. In the original story, Caribou swallowed Udon's leading snail and knocked out Udon's communications. Den Mushi were also far more versatile. Kane knew of models for communication, eavesdropping, anti-eavesdropping, photography, video recording, projection, signal jamming. Specialized Den Mushi were expensive and rare. If the Tontata could learn to breed them, the market potential would be enormous. Besides farming, the tribe was adept at taming creatures. In the original tale, they trained rhinoceros beetles and pink bees for patrol and combat. "Leave it to us," they cried. After giving his instructions, Kane used a little hockey technique to mist the newly planted seeds with rain. Reverent looks followed him as he departed Kibi. Flower Capital, General Castle. With King Riku's blessing, Kane, now more of an absentee ruler, had pressing business that required his personal attention. This time, he was to be present. "Lord Kane, they've arrived," Fukurokuju announced, sliding the paper door open as he entered. Kane lay with his head in Kozuki Hiyori's lap, snacking on a grape she had peeled and handed him. He swallowed it in one bite and mumbled, "Let them in." "Yes, Lord Kane." Fukurokuju bowed and backed out, then straightened and called out, "You may enter." Kozuki Hiyori dabbed the corner of Kane's mouth with a handkerchief, smiling softly. "Lord Kane, shall I leave?" Kane didn't hesitate. "No, stay." She obeyed, continuing to tend him as three men in white suits and cloaks, their faces masked, entered. They found Kane propped against Hiyori, being pampered like a princeling. He let Hiyori finish straightening him, then sat up slowly. "Welcome to Wano, representatives of the world government," he said. As the three CP0 agents sized him up, so did he them. Youthful, unusually powerful, arrogant, and lecherous, those were the quick impressions they made of Kane. Indeed, what 18-year-old, newly famous, and newly in control of a country could be entirely humble? The man at the front wore a clown-like mask and bowed slightly. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Kane." "Please, sit," Kane invited. After the three took their seats according to rank, the clown-masked man leaned forward, his voice smooth. "Mr. Kane, may we discuss cooperation? If Beasts is not satisfied with the world government's offer, we can raise the price. How about a 10% premium?" 10%? Kane scoffed. "Do you think Beasts is begging on its knees?" He raised three fingers. 30%? The clown-masked man's face brightened. "I can agree to that." No, 3 times, Kane said with a wide smile. The CP-No agent behind the clown-faced man snapped. "Impossible. Not even Seastone products ever command that price," Kane shrugged. "Then the negotiations are over. Please leave." He made a dismissive gesture. The CP-No froze. No one negotiated like that. You at least bargain, they thought. They had urgent orders from the Gorosei. Failure was not an option. The clown-masked man kept his composure and tried a softer tack. "Mr. Kane, that isn't how you negotiate. Does Mr. Kaido know of this price?" Kane picked at his nails, indifferent. "Mr. Kaido has given me full authority over Seastone trade." Damn, that was Kaido through and through, the clown-masked man cursed inwardly. He maintained a calm face and continued to reason. "Even so, tripling the price is excessive. The world government isn't some flock to be fleeced." "I return that sentiment," Kane said, and the air shifted. An invisible roar of Hao Shoku burst out of him. Hao Shoku? The clown-masked man's pupils narrowed. Even more unnerving than the hockey was Kane's next line. He sounded as if he knew what the world government intended, making him unnervingly confident. The clown-masked man's mind raced, but Kane softened his tone and smiled. "Actually, I don't want to raise the price that much. As you know, Wano was ruled by Orochi before. After we took over, we purged much of Orochi's poison to better govern the country. That cleanup led to a steep drop in the number of artisans. Right now, we can barely maintain the basic capacity to mine seastone ore. We certainly can't export large quantities to the government. You also know how scarce seastone is in the open sea. If we curb production here, prices on the outside market will rise. In short, production has fallen, and Kane intended to use scarcity to push prices up.